A young man strolls lazily through the mountains, being dragged along by his daughter. He smirks carelessly and listens to his daughter, finally starting to walk faster. But he keeps whining about his injury, begging her not to rush and to walk slower. In contrast to her father, his little daughter is full of energy, carrying 40 kilograms of stuff while doing it. Which is why, though she's watching him with pity, she scolds and mocks her father, who in her eyes is a total wimp. Hearing that from his daughter, the man's relaxed expression shifts to surprised and annoyed. He quickly regains his composure and tries to sneak his stuff into the kid's things, but the girl isn't falling for it. The lazy guy doesn't give up and, ignoring her, dumps his backpack on her, then darts away in a hurry. As he runs, our hero thinks about his reclusive life after getting wounded, which is why he hid his daughter Gyu away. But then the kid catches up, determined to get back at the jerk for his trickery and laziness. Just then an unexpected car speeds toward them, cutting their confrontation short. The car hits the ground with a huge force, losing control after a powerful impact. The car spins out of control, skidding in zigzags, and crashes into a tree at full speed with a loud crack. The cloud of dust clears, and through it our heroes are seen unharmed, only the man's smoky sneakers pointing toward the collision. Seeing the powerful crash, Gyu worried about the man who had crashed into them, which slightly upset her father. This person turned out to be an attractive woman who had been injured in the impact, and she asked for help. From such an accident, the girl lost consciousness, but she still managed to survive. Our hero, seeing this, started thinking seriously about the girl's condition, pondering what it all meant. He figures out he should do CPR on her, clearly impressed by her attractiveness, but then only to draw more condemnation from his daughter. Before he can carry out his plan, they hear the screech of tires from an approaching car. People in the car exit with bats and a hostile attitude, threatening to take revenge on the heroes if they don't leave immediately. But the guys aren't scared at all, just standing there confused by the bully's audacity in threatening them so boldly. After giving each other a high five, they get ready to teach the bullies a lesson. Gyu throws her backpack off her shoulders and heads toward the gangsters, while her father tries to save the woman in the car. He asks Gyu to be gentle before punishing the gangsters, pulling out a glowing needle. The little girl confidently walks toward the men with bats, causing confusion on their faces. Meanwhile, our main character, feeling guilty for breaking the woman's car, tries to wake her up with the same needle. The woman opens her eyes and looks at him through her broken glasses, letting out a soft moan. Only after finishing with the woman does he hear his daughter's voice, which seems to have already taken care of the gang. On the ground lay the defeated bodies, a sight that moved the girl's father, since the beaten gangsters could have asked for compensation for the damage done. The terrified scum didn't dare get any closer, trying instead to retreat as fast as they could. The band leader, bruised and battered, was crying and begging for mercy, pleading to be let go. As the girl bragged to her father, all the gangsters bolted, cursing the little brat. Our hero watched them carefully, thinking about something and sucking on a straw. Studying the men, he managed to read their lips, realizing they were worried about the outcome and how Mr. Ma would explain it. Thinking about the trouble that was sure to come for him and his daughter, he heard the girl heading toward the injured. The girl started calming the scared woman, who had been hiding behind the car the whole time. Taking the girl's words to heart, the mysterious lady thanked her saviors with a sweet smile. But breaking her glasses, she couldn't see who she was thanking or even which way to look. The girl just casually glanced at the woman, thinking her father might have pierced the victim's eye with a needle, which is why she was looking the wrong way. Without thinking, little Gyu politely offered the woman money as thanks, which caused a big reaction from her father. In the end, our heroes were riding in the broken car, and the girl's father asked to give them a ride to Xinjiang as a thank you. The broken car sputtered and coughed, giving away that it had crashed only recently. The car's owner drove along, slightly upset, staring sadly out the window as if she were riding in an old, wheezing tractor. A call came through on her phone from her uncle, asking where she was and calling her by her name, Yue Kaiyan. On the other end, they spoke of her grandfather's imminent death, which caught the main character's attention, who was driving the car. She answered, saying she was already on her way to see her grandfather one last time. The sudden chain of events made her wonder if it was all just coincidence, with the mafia attack and her grandfather's death coming one after the other. After the whole conversation, Gyu was already about to say something to the woman, which made her beg our noble hero Mr. Lin to help save her grandfather. It turns out just a minute ago the girl was praising her father, talking about his amazing ability to bring people back from the dead, but he clearly didn't intend to do that. Desperate, the woman started pleading with the miracle doctor, offering him anything he wanted in exchange for saving her father. Charmed by his charm and more, he finally agreed to help Yue Kaiyan. But wanting to get back at his daughter, he praised her instead, convincing himself that she would definitely handle her grandfather's treatment, which made the little girl unhappy. The woman also reacted ambiguously to his words, not understanding how a little girl could possibly help. Our heroes eventually make their way to the second hospital in Xinhai, but only to find it eerily quiet and empty. When Yue Kaiyan dashes to her grandfather's ward, our heroes start arguing as usual, but neither realizes how tense the situation has become. During their argument, they fail to notice the woman sprinting toward the dying grandfather's room, her breath ragged and her heart pounding. She bursts into the room just as her grandfather is being resuscitated, only to face her nervous uncle scolding her for her supposed neglect, not knowing he's about to lose his own father. Our hero strolls in nonchalantly, leaning against the doorframe and trying to shut down their shouting, but his presence only adds to the confusion and tension in the room. A girl's voice cuts through the chaos, informing her father about the poisoned patient, which is when Yue Kaiyan's uncle reacts with even more fury, unaware of the storm about to break. Little girl calmly chomps on a candy, inspecting her grandfather and confidently diagnoses poisoning, only to scold the foolish actions of the doctors. Uncle gets angry and kicks our heroes out of the room, but his niece tries to convince the aggressively minded man otherwise. Dr. Lin gets worried by this reaction and starts to suspect something is wrong. Guo quickly weaves past the doctors and her uncle, trying to help the dying old man, and asks her father for a silver needle to heal him. But he only suggests she use the toothpicks on the table, and little girl, doing a flip, flings a can of toothpicks into the air. Everyone present watches in shock as the events unfold, while the girl's father softly smiles, proudly watching her amazing actions. Guo drives 8 toothpicks into the sick man's body, using a technique called Shen Nuan's 8 needles. The nervous uncle complains about the procedure, untrusting as he looks at the needles in the old man's body. Shocked cries echo through the room. The dying grandfather opens his eyes, shocking everyone around him. 10 minutes later, amazed doctors surround the girl, offering a mountain of candy in exchange for teaching her their knowledge and techniques. It turns out the saved old man is one of the hospital's co-owners, and stunned by the hero's skill, he offers Lin a position as head of the traditional medicine department. His offer doesn't interest our hero, who clearly doesn't like sitting in a hospital office, and he dramatically leaves the room, calling the little girl with him. He tells his family to keep an eye on his surroundings, since the poison had been building up in his body for a while, and as he steps out, he glances at the nervous Uncle Yu Qian. Noticing the man's hint, the uncle stares at him with inflamed, bloodshot eyes full of anger, his face veins bulging from tension and rage. As they walk toward the exit, the heroes talk about their everyday money troubles and forgotten items in Miss Tan's car. But right then, a cart passes in front of them with a woman unconscious in it. The surprised little girl recognizes her mother in the woman, telling her father about it, which makes him immediately order her to go with him. In Lin's memories 6 years ago, the Lin family hired killers to take Mother Guo away. Our hero was mortally wounded, but he vowed to survive for the sake of his daughter, and together with her they began a life as hermits. All this time he thought about his daughter's mother, her difficult fate never stopping his search. And finally, after years of searching, our heroes found her, ready to fight for her rescue. Moving menacingly toward the men in suits resembling special security, they were determined to free the woman. Approaching the security guards, our hero pretends to be a new head of the ward, showing his badge, awkwardly smiling and scratching his head, taking on the most innocent appearance possible. The stern security guards don't like the new head of the ward and demanding someone more experienced. The man throws the badge and sends our heroes packing. He doesn't give up trying to get inside and distracts the guards, giving Guo a chance to take care of them. Meanwhile, the uncle of Miss Tan is talking to someone on the phone about the recent situation with her grandfather. He hears the noise, snaps to attention, and glances toward the hospital. The noise was caused by little Guo, who menacingly punches a guard in the legs, making a deep dent in the wall. The girl clearly shows she doesn't care about the guards, and no one will stop her from seeing her mom. The guards, scared, let our heroes in, and they rush into the room finally to see their loved one. Ling races toward the hospital room, trembling with excitement and anticipation for meeting Wei Wei. Finally bursting through the doors, they see a woman sitting on the hospital bed. Guo runs toward her mother, sobbing with joy, eager to finally touch and feel her warmth. But our hero hesitates to join his family, and upon closer look, realizes this woman is not his Wei Wei at all. Meanwhile, the little girl tries to hug the stranger, who stares at the child in confusion. The man shivers, trying to figure out why this woman feels so familiar, but then senses a flicker of an old wound. He clutches his chest, coughs up blood, and struggles to stay upright, leaning against the wall. While he regains consciousness, the woman collapses, scaring the little girl. He steps closer to the stranger, touches her wrist, and only then realizes she's suffering from hypothermia that's drained all her strength. As he keeps examining the woman, he tries to figure out how she could possibly be connected to Mother Guo. His thoughts are interrupted by Yue Kaiyan suddenly appearing, her worried expression as she flings open the hospital room doors. Hearing that bandits had broken into the hospital, attacked the doctor, and taken his uniform, she rushes to find our heroes to make sure they're unharmed. Seeing the familiar hospital gown on Lin, she seemed to slowly start figuring out who the culprit was. Hearing voices behind the door, the woman decided to peek out to see what was going on. The stripped-down, injured doctor was telling the men from the police about what had happened, crying while covering himself up. Our hero realized what was happening, grabbed his daughter and rushed to escape the scene, leaping out the window. Before he could even jump out, he was caught by Yue Kaiyan, who firmly grabbed the stolen hospital gown. But still, breaking the glass, he jumped out the window, dragging not only his daughter but also the stubborn Yue Kaiyan with him. She screamed as she fell from the 8th floor behind the man and the girl, not expecting such an outcome. Our heroes flew down confidently without screaming, as if they'd done this every day, while the poor woman screamed as she fell. Mr. Lin landed easily on his feet and immediately caught the scared Yue Kaiyan, while little Guo landed nearby. The woman was in tears, unable to believe what was happening, not knowing if she was alive or dead. Lin looked slightly guilty at the woman, trying to catch her breath after the fall. Once calm, she turned around with the apartment certificate from Naiching in her hands, making sure our heroes had a place to stay, and offered them this spot on behalf of her grandfather. After some time, dad and daughter stood in front of a fancy apartment building, but neither of them noticed the tension in the air. Looking at the building, the man figured out how generous the old man was, but the little girl was still thinking about mom, not realizing how much her father had changed. Hearing this, Lin decided to tell the girl that the woman wasn't her mother, only to find her stubbornly clinging to the memory of her mom. But the girl didn't believe her father, insisting the woman was an exact copy of her mom's photo, which is when someone interrupted their conversation. It turned out to be the suspicious uncle from the Tan family, who wanted to tell our hero about his family's status, clearly with some plan in mind. As expected, the man didn't care at all, which surprised the uncle no end. He tries to interest our hero by offering a check for 100,000 in exchange for Lin working for him. Lin reaches out and takes the check, thinking about the offer this man made. Mr. Tan is happy with such an easy deal, assuming our hero is just a simple mercenary. But with a dark look, Lin says he still doesn't accept the offer. Then, shouting loudly, he kicks Mr. Tan out with his offer and money, but the check slips away unnoticed, hiding it under his shirt. The man stands there for a few seconds, completely confused by what was happening. Lena's attitude made him furious, his eyes bloodshot and veins bulging back across his face. He shouted for help, and a mob of enforcers burst from the alley with bats and other weapons. Within seconds, dozens of thugs surrounded our heroes, cutting off all escape. Mr. Lina and his daughter stood firm in their places, as if they weren't even scared by the danger. Standing among the crowd, Mr. Lina spat out his cigarette, cursing under his breath. He ordered them to take care of our heroes and grab the money, splitting it among the whole gang. The crowd erupts, rushing toward Mr. Lin and Guo with weapons drawn, but only to realize they're completely unprepared for the chaos ahead. After some time, Mr. Tan walks through the rainy streets, talking on the phone with the head of the very gang that clearly failed to take down our guys. Frustrated and angry, he threatens to expose Mr. Ma, but the man on the other end is only scared of Mr. Tan's father and daughter, whom the mob couldn't beat. He convinces the man that taking down our heroes isn't as easy as it seems, which is when the real danger starts to unfold. They take out every one of Mr. Tan's men, staying completely unharmed and ready for the next move. In reality, the gang leader doesn't care much about punishing this family because his real plan is to get rich, and all he needs is Yue Kaiyan. The next day, our heroes headed to the experimental elementary school. Walking down the school corridor, the father scolded his daughter for fighting with classmates because they couldn't afford compensation fees since the check for 100,000 from Mr. Tan had gotten wet in the rain. But the girl only thought about her mother, and the school didn't interest her, not even the help from Miss Tan with school bothered her. Lin gently ran his fingers through the girl's hair, promising to find her mother. Then they heard screams and a familiar name of the gang leader. Clearly someone was in trouble and trying to escape from this scoundrel Ma Jianbin. He boldly grabbed Yue Kaiyan's wrists, persuading her to kiss him. He pushes her hard against the wall, and she crashes into it with a loud sound. Yuexian threatens to call security, but the attacker ignores her warning and keeps harassing the young woman, pinning her against the wall. She desperately fights back, sweating from fear and a sense of hopelessness. Guo opens the door to the office, subtly pushing the man standing behind her out of sight. Ma Jianbin continues pinning the woman against the wall, annoyed that someone had walked in and interrupted him. Our hero calmly tells the creep that Yuexian clearly doesn't like his actions. A guy who was there yesterday's fight tells the leader that this is the same family that couldn't be beaten by a whole crowd. Looking at our heroes, he clearly underestimates the little girl, figuring that fighting is something only the girl's father knows how to do. Lin asks the bully one more time to calm down and stop harassing Miss Tan. Not believing that he alone could beat 30 people, Ma Jianbin rushes into battle. With a feral grin, he lightning-fast swings a knife toward the neck of our fearless hero. A second later, the attacker is pinned against the wall, lying on the floor after a powerful punch. Everything happened so fast that the scum didn't even realize what had just occurred. The little girl standing next to him tried hard not to laugh at what she'd just seen. Grabbing the girl and pressing a knife to her head, the scum threatened to kill her if her father didn't stop the fight and surrender. Our hero just gave him a bored look, knowing exactly what was about to happen. The people involved in yesterday's fight all begged their boss to stop, their faces twisted in fear. Shaking with fear, they tried to explain to their boss that the girl wasn't as simple as she looked, and could be more dangerous than her father. He looked down at the girl, only to see her innocent and smiling face. In seconds, he was standing there beaten up, threatening to get revenge on their weird family. The family dad just watched as the scared criminals ran off quickly. After defeating the criminals and saving Miss Tan again, the girl ran into her arms telling her she was ready for class. The kind woman offered Lin Fen to take his daughter Guo Guo to class. While his daughter was in class with Miss Tan, our hero headed to the second hospital in Xinhai. He arrived at the hospital, only to find out the woman he met yesterday had already been discharged last night. Our hero, surprised, asked the nurse again, not believing that the woman had really left. Lost in thought, he tried to figure out how to track down Mother Guo Guo again, and why his old injury kept acting up. At the hospital, an old man greeted our hero and thanked him and Guo Guo once more for their help. He also explained that he had thought things over again about Mr. Lin Fen's job offer and realized he truly deserved to lead all the departments. But even that offer didn't interest our hero, so he tried to leave quickly while Mr. Tan tried to stop him. Old man promises Lin Fen 50,000 yuan a month and access to all ancient medical books, only to find it's a way to hook him in deeper. Money doesn't matter to our hero, but he starts thinking about the possible knowledge he could gain about Shen Nuan's pharmacopoeia, which might help treat his injury. Old man adds that if Lin Fen accepts his offer, he can attend the Qingsu Group's celebration on behalf of the Seven Tans, which starts in 10 days. It turns out he knows the president personally, who ends up being the woman in room 801. Our hero finds out her name is Lin Yin-er. 10 days later, the Qingsu Group celebration takes place in the Jinsu estate, where the Tan family is invited. The celebration brings together many influential families who drink and laugh at someone, not knowing what's coming next. It turns out our heroes are the center of attention, dressed in a way that makes Miss Tan feel awkward and self-conscious. The tables were set with fancy dishes, which really caught the little girl and her father's eye. Our heroes dive into the free food, clearing the table in no time, leaving the hosts flustered and embarrassed. Ma Jianbin, someone we already know, watches disapprovingly, smugly noting that this mansion isn't for people like them. But the father and daughter keep eating, while he shifts his focus to Yue Qian, criticizing Lin Fen as a twice-married beggar. His words anger Miss Tan, who insists Lin Fen is the family doctor, which only fuels Ma Jianbin's mockery further. Hearing the guy's taunts, our heroes decide to scare him a little. Show off your courage, he tells the kid, claiming he didn't fight her seriously last time, and if it had gone that way, she'd be in the hospital. Smiling sweetly, the kid offers to rematch, determined to show off her full strength this time. At the thought, the guy winces in horror, slightly trembling from fear of the girl. But clenching his teeth, he replies that he's not afraid of the girl, clearly having something up his sleeve. Thinking they'd be too scared to do it at the party in front of all of Xingxia's business magnates, he was sure the girl wouldn't dare touch him. Guo Guo wasn't fazed at all, grabbed the toothpick and marched toward the scoundrel. This move surprised the guy, who clearly didn't expect such boldness. A moment later, screams echoed through the mansion, drawing the attention of all the guests present. The noise drew President Ma Group's attention, after which he, surrounded by guards, headed toward the source of the commotion. Seeing his cousin on his knees, he thought he was bowing to him, but after the girl hit him with the toothpick, he couldn't get back up. Crying and jabbing a finger at the little girl who stood politely aside, he called her a devil and blamed her for everything. The president called for security, but only to tell his cousin to stop crying like a child and calm down. The awkward security guard ran over, only to start blaming our heroes, pointing out that they were getting themselves into trouble. The girl's father stood silently, while she, happily waving her hand, finally admitted that she was really the one to blame. But the guard, as if not noticing the girl, kept blaming the father, accusing him of shifting the blame onto the child. In the end, the guard ordered the other security guards to take our hero out of the manor. Watching this, Miss Tan asks them to stop and let the family's chief doctor go free. The president accuses Tan's family of being involved in the attempted assassination of Ma Jianbin in response to what happened. The guests whisper among themselves, discussing the situation. Miss Tan stumbles awkwardly under the stares and conversations of the crowd, not expecting such accusations from the president. The president looks down at her in surprise after hearing the little girl's voice. Standing below with a toothpick in her hand, Guo Guo tells the president how annoying he is. The girl giggles politely, then pokes the man's leg with the toothpick. A man's scream echoed through the building as he twisted in pain from his leg, dropping a glass of drink onto the floor. The little girl kept smiling sweetly, threatening the man with another toothpick poke, which would leave him in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. President Ma Group, unable to stand the treatment, ordered his guards to arrest our family, only to realize they were already in trouble. The guards rushed forward quickly, attacking the boy's father who was screaming about his innocence in fear. He called for his daughter's help, begging her to protect him from the crowd of guards. The men who had been hurt by the girl's hands watched with smug smiles as the guards struggled to deal with our heroes. An officer zooms past them with massive force, crashing into the wall and bouncing back. The entire squad of officers scatter in all directions, getting hit with heavy blows and crashing down with a loud crash. The girl wipes her hands with a calm and bored look, while her father hides behind Miss Tan, waiting for her to defeat them all. Then Lin Fen spots the exact same woman from the hospital, who turns out to be the president. The woman tries to make sense of what's happening, only to learn the culprit is the head doctor of the Tan family. Looking over at the kids, she recognizes them, recalling the situation from the hospital. President Ma Group approaches trembling, explaining how he was attacked at Miss Lin's mansion, but all of it ends up being her responsibility. He only gets reprimanded for attacking her honored guests, who turn out to be our guys, which shocks everyone around. The answer completely unsettles the man, so he confusedly asks Miss Lin what she means, not knowing she's about to reveal the truth. Not wanting to deal with him anymore, she wants to end the conversation and finally dismisses the attackers of Lin as guards. Unsatisfied with the answer, the man disappoints in the host, telling her directly as he's led out, not realizing how much he's been wrong. After his departure, she reflects on how badly the Ma family treats everyone, fighting with the Tan family and trying to swallow Jinsu Group. Miss Tan awkwardly thanks Miss Lin for saving them and sweetly smiles at her. Little Gyo saw a woman and, still thinking she was her mom, ran to hug her, causing complete confusion for Miss Tan. The woman politely asked the girl not to call her mom but to just use her name, but the girl apparently liked calling her mommy. To avoid embarrassment, Miss Lin quickly started running away from the girl, who stubbornly kept thinking she was her mom. The next day, the little girl went to school, leaving her father alone at home. Lena was doing housework and, while wiping dishes, suddenly heard a knock at the door. He called out to Gyo, hoping to find out whether it was she who had come home or someone else knocking on their door. He cracked open the door, peering into the hallway, only to see the one searching for his daughter. In the hallway, surrounded by guards in wheelchairs, Ma Jianbin and Ma Tao sat, and no doctor could help them. Crying, Jianbin begged Lin to help them and asked Gyo to save them. Crossing his arms, Lin told them the little girl was still at school and would return only in the evening, and added that they should ask the girl themselves since it wasn't his responsibility. But at that moment, looking at him, the men concluded he was a weakling. Mao Tao pulls up close and asks Lin if he's alone at home. Not hearing a clear answer, he orders his guards to attack and capture him. His plan was to capture the man so his daughter wouldn't have to choose, but she healed them in exchange for her father. Lin, calm and standing his ground, prepared for their attack after hearing their plan. Outside, a passing old man watched as bodies flew out of the apartment windows with a loud crash. The weak-sided old man mistook them for a meteor shower. He kicks his leg up onto Ma Tao's knee, and our hero finally offers him help. He cracks the knee with a loud snap, causing a shrieking cry of pain that scares the second scoundrel badly. The one on his knees, crying loudly, begs Lin to spare him since he's innocent and entirely to blame for Ma Tao. But Lin replies that brothers should share all sorrows, and from the apartment building again come shrieking cries, which again draws the attention of the same old passerby. The town is getting dark, which means little Gyo is coming back from school. Cold water is poured over the unconscious culprits, forcing them to wake up. Confused and scared, they try to figure out where they are and who did this to them. One of them stood a girl holding a bucket of water, smiling sweetly and letting them know it was her. Seeing the girl, Ma Jianbin begged for help, showering her with compliments, but the little girl dryly replied that this procedure would cost them. The second man, shaking in fear, asked her for the price. The girl decided to consult her father, who thoughtfully started listing things like bigger apartments and a car that would have been useful for them. Ma Tao quickly came to life and, agreeing to their price, assured our heroes that the big house and fancy car were already theirs. An hour later, the man lay in a pool of blood, with a wound from the nail the girl used instead of a toothpick. Crying, the man thought the girl had done it on purpose to get back at him. He did get better eventually, but the girl still hadn't healed his second leg and it seemed didn't plan to. Just then, the second victim decided it was his turn to be healed, but Gyo refused to treat him until he paid for the visit. He complained to his cousin about the girl's behavior, but the cousin just slapped him and told him to shut up. It's late at night and both men, with beaten guards limping, are leaving the apartment building, wanting to settle things with our heroes one last time. Taking his daughter to school, Lin is sitting in a fancy new convertible, discussing renovations for his new house. Happy with the new house and her father's promise of a princess room for her, the girl, smiling, heads off to school. Back at the apartments, our hero finds out someone has broken into the house. Lin walks into the house and finds an unfamiliar man sitting in the room, telling him he's breaking the law. The stranger rudely tells Lin he doesn't deserve to know his name and sneers that Lin Ying-er is his fiancée and tells Lin to stay away from her. Our hero coolly insults back as usual, not feeling a single bit of fear. His reaction only makes the stranger more angry. His fists clench and he prepares to attack. He swings and charges toward Lin Fen, aiming to hit him hard with force. To defend himself, Lin pulls out his needle and stabs the attacker's hand. At the same time, the stranger freezes, trying to figure out what our hero did, while Lin calmly explains he injected the stranger with poison. Furious and scared, the attacker demands an antidote, threatening Lin with his status, which Lin has no idea about. A stranger turns out to be from the Xia Yijin-du family, a clan he claims is best left alone. Hearing this, our hero gets even darker, clearly not happy about getting tangled with these families, especially with Yin-er staying in the Lin family in Jindu. With a grim look, Lin kicks the stranger out, not wanting to see him again, since the Lin family should never know that he and Guo are still alive. The confident stranger, annoyed by the man's words, threatens him to treat him with more respect. The angry man grabs the brat by the neck, unable to hold back his emotions after those words. The stranger ends up pressed against the wall, getting a strong hit and feeling our hero's anger. Lin Feng stared at the guy, promising to crush all 5 powerful families in Jindu. After some time, when the whole family was gathered, little Guo told Miss Tan about how she healed those 2 and ended up getting this house, which left her in awe. Looking at the girl, Miss Tan remembered her grandfather's wish to someday have a granddaughter like Guo. But she quickly pushed those thoughts aside, recalling that she was there for the hero's new home. Meanwhile, the TV was showing news about the cosmetics made by Jinsu Group, whose products had caused a massive number of allergic reactions, which could lead to huge problems. Our heroes got worried about this and started thinking about how they could help Yin-er. Din decided to start with the ingredients, hoping to fix the reaction to the cosmetics, but only to realize it was too late. Meanwhile, Yin-er sat in the Jinsu Group residence, reading the negative reviews about her cosmetics, not knowing that help was on the way. When she heard the phone ring, she picked it up and heard Yue Kaian's voice, who called her to Lin Fen, who had figured out how to help her. She walked confidently toward our hero, determined not to give up on Ma Group and her company. Just as she was about to leave, a company employee ran up and told her that visitors were coming to see her. An hour later, the woman was already at Lin Fen's place, where he discovered that unlike the sample Yue Kaian used, the sold product contained a lot of synthetic hormones. He thought the synthetic hormone product might have been released by traders, only to realize it was actually a cover for something bigger. The man offered to restore the company's reputation and fix the public's opinion of it, but then realized the real problem was deeper than he thought. In his mind, by making a scar-removing ointment that could undo the damage of toxic cosmetics, they'd be able to rebuild their reputation, but he didn't know how far the damage had spread. Meanwhile, Go Wu, who hadn't let go of Miss Lin, still believing her to be her mother, wanted to win her trust for her father's plan, not knowing how much she'd resist. As he removed the cloth from the pot, he asked his daughter to prepare the fire and herbs, not realizing the pot itself held a secret that would change everything. The pot underneath the cloth turned out to be Sunya Samio's kettle, surprising the gathered ladies, which meant the whole setup was more complicated than it seemed. They found out the kettle sold at auction for 80 million yuan was a replica, but the real one was the one they were looking at. Her eyes widened at the power of our hero, and she became curious about who he really was. He calmly replied that he was just a country doctor, doing his usual work without a second thought. The women watched the potion being made, still amazed by the knowledge and strength of our heroes, who calmly discussed the recipe as if it was nothing. After finishing the potion, the little girl brought the fresh remedy to Miss Lin. Taking the girl's offer, she started unbuttoning her blouse to apply the ointment, not knowing what was coming next. Our hero couldn't help but notice the scene, which earned him a scolding from his daughter. To avoid awkwardness, the girl led the flustered Yin-er to her room, while her father pretended not to be paying attention. The woman pulled off her shirt to reveal her stomach with a huge scar, which surprised Yue Kaian. As it turned out, the scar was left by the Lin family, which is why she cut off communication with them. Guo started applying medicine to her scar, trying to cheer the woman up. While the girl applied the ointment, our hero stood outside the door, thinking about the words he'd overheard about the Lin family. 10 minutes later, the satisfied woman descended the stairs, informing Lin that the scar was already almost gone. She was really happy about it because this ointment could save her from the crisis. Our hero advised her to dilute the ointment in a 1:100 ratio and present it to the public, and added that she should uncover the traitor while people's attention was still on the cream, which is exactly what she set out to do. Concerned that Miss Lin was linking them to the real mother of Guo, he sent the girl with her so nothing would happen to her. The happy girl took her hand and cheerfully began to protect the woman. The father gave his little girl a warning before she left with the woman, hoping she'd behave herself, not knowing that they couldn't afford compensation. Confident and determined, the little girl promised her father everything would go smoothly. Arriving at Jinzu Group's residence, the little girl Gugu and Miss Lin walked into her office, radiating charisma and confidence. Miss Lin reminded her staff that visitors had arrived, but the girl's presence was unexpected. The woman asked the little girl to wait in the hallway while she dealt with the shareholders, thinking the child would be too scared to stay. But the girl proudly told her she wasn't afraid at all, calling her mom again, which really embarrassed Miss Lin's subordinate. Our heroes confidently walked into the conference room. Standing by the door, Miss Lin's subordinate overheard the dissatisfied complaints of the shareholders demanding liquidation. But within a moment there were sounds of pounding and crashing, then pleased to stop and calm down. Meanwhile, in the conference room, crying and beaten shareholders, trembling, hid from the little girl who had already scared them. Seeing how the little girl had handled the hostile crowd, Miss Lin was amazed. Just half an hour later, Miss Lin handed her proof of one of the shareholders' betrayal to her employee, so she could pass it to the police. After wrapping up that task, our hero headed to the factory to check the cream packaging, but then planned to grab dinner next. The worker would have been surprised by how quickly the problem was resolved, only to find the shareholders beaten up in the office. Meanwhile, the girl's father was sitting with the Tan family, sipping oolong tea with Uncle Yue Kaiyan. After chatting a bit about the tea, our hero got curious about why he had been invited in the first place. Mr. Tan reminded him about his access to all the ancient medical texts, and that's exactly why he called him over, and of course, he wanted to be friends with Lin Feng. Taking the opportunity, Lin asked about the Shen Nuan pharmacopoeia, which would help him deal with his injuries. The old man says he heard about her from the older generation, but thought it was just some kind of legend. The pharmacopoeia isn't just a legend, but includes teachings and research from Sun Yimiao. Once our hero bought that very same cauldron from an antique dealer, along with Sun Yimiao's diary. In that diary it said the pharmacopoeia has techniques that can cure hopeless diseases, and could help our hero heal from the old injury he got from Uncle Guo. Grandpa promised to look into it for him, and then asked why our hero needed this pharmacopoeia, catching Lin off guard. Lin came up with an excuse saying Guo is interested in medicine, and he wanted to give her such a gift. He rushed to retreat, but then stopped to grab Guo only to be stopped by the old man. Mr. Tan prepared something for Lin and called him over. The old man led our hero to the library, possibly to hand over those ancient books. While searching for the book on the lower shelf, our attentive hero noticed the old man's impressive physique. Caught staring at the old man in a weird way, he slapped himself in the face to distract himself from those thoughts. In the end, Mr. Tan pulled out a box with some contents that had been stored in his collection for over 20 years. Our hero opens the box to find 9 thin silver needles, which he planned to give to Lin Feng. Lin Feng is amazed by the sight, fascinated by the legendary silver dragon needles, which are highly valuable among all needles. The old man kindly hands over the set to the man, who is very flattered by the unexpected gift. Our hero, with great gratitude and honor, promises to help the old man whenever he needs assistance. The grandfather, rubbing his hands together, is very pleased with the outcome and offers Lin a drink. After some time, the drunk guys leave the Tan estate, swearing and promising to help each other selflessly. Mr. Tan was upset after getting in the taxi, only to find out he was supposed to make Lin the husband of his granddaughter. Lin meets his daughter and Ms. Lin waiting outside the amusement park, but then realizes he didn't know they were having dinner. The girl grabs her father and tells him the dinner is at a seafood restaurant today, which is the perfect chance to spend time together. Ms. Lin explains that it's her way of thanking our heroes for their help. As they head to the restaurant, Guo notices her father is drunk and demands excuses, which makes Ms. Lin nearby laugh. Walking into the seafood center, the girl spots an empty table and calls her parents over. She's about to sit down when a stranger pushes her away, claiming the table's already taken by some Mr. Bao. The kid stays calm and asks who Mr. Bao is, clearly annoyed by the finger jabbing. Slurping in his direction, the guy rudely replies that it's best not to mess with Mr. Bao. Then he slams the table, shoves the kid out, and aggressively makes a face. But the kid insists they were the first to take the table, and the guy's just asking for trouble. After roughly replying, he lunges forward to grab Guo. The girl punches him with her fist, sending the guy flying through the window with a loud crash, but then the guys from his group get scared. He slaps himself in the face. The family dad was stressing over another compensation for his daughter's behavior. The others run away in fear, calling the girl a monster and avoiding her touch altogether. 2 big guys storm into the cafe, wanting to figure out what's going on. The guy cries, pointing at the girl and complaining she beat him up. A big tough guy approaches the girl, angry she beat up his men, and orders her whole family to be tied up. Miss Lin got spooked by what she saw, but our hero rushed over to calm her down, insisting that Guo would handle everything. The man got so angry he hurled tables and chairs around, shouting that he'd teach the lesson on behalf of Mr. Ma. When she heard that familiar name, the girl confidently charged into the fight, dodging the table hurled in her direction. Meanwhile, in the VIP room surrounded by girls, Ma Jianbin was drinking to a certain Mr. Wan. This Mr. Wan turns out to be a martial arts master hired by Jianbin to take revenge on our family. Someone just smashed through the door, causing the guy to lose his temper. A restaurant employee came to tell Ma Jianbin that someone had beaten up his men. Mr. Wan stood up from the table and decided to handle the situation himself, determined to help his boss, who had hired him exactly for moments like this. Walking into the hall, Mr. Wan saw our little girl among the beaten men and was surprised they hadn't managed to take down the kid. Gyu admired his resolve and became curious about beating a man. Furious at her confidence, he bolted forward and leaped toward her. Our heroine didn't flinch at all and got ready to fight back. In an instant, the master of martial arts was on the floor, beaten by little Gyu. The man was shocked by the girl's skill and the power of her punch. Realizing he couldn't beat the girl, he decided the best move was to back down, even though the girl demanded a meeting with Mr. Ma. Ma Jianbin sat in his wheelchair while his guards brought him down the stairs, searching for Master Wan. The guy saw our family and threatened them with revenge, but the girl's father didn't get why Mr. Ma kept making threats, provoking the little girl. He approached the girl and offered her a deal to heal his legs in exchange for forgiving the little girl for her behavior, but Gyu refused, demanding payment for her treatment. He started whispering with the guards, continuing his search for Master Wan, insisting they look everywhere for him. The guy clearly didn't want to pay the girl, so he kept threatening her until she agreed to treat his wounds. Tired of the threats, the little girl unexpectedly threw a chair at the bully. The guards scrambled, nervously searching for the master of martial arts, who was already nowhere to be found. Twirling the thin needle in her hands, Gyu approached the offender, who trembled in fear, warning the girl about the influence of his family, the Xia. The name didn't faze the girl, but her father got a little alert hearing mention of the family's leader, Xia. The little girl unflinchingly stuck the needle in his hand, robbing Ma Jianbin of his limbs' function. But the girl still worried about potential problems because of his family's influence. Lin Feng gently rubbed the little girl's head to calm her down, knowing they'd still have to fight all 5 families. Watched from the sidelines, knowing the Xia family stood behind the Lin family, so they wouldn't let our heroes escape so easily. News spread online about Jinsu Group's tainted cosmetics, which turned out to be fake, but the company was still going through a tough period. Dad was driving his brand new convertible while Gyu read news about Jinsu's new product, which caused the company's popularity to spike suddenly. After reading the news, the girl felt really proud of herself, surprising her dad with how she praised her own abilities. She learned how to brag about herself from her dad, which he of course denied. When they arrived at school, they saw a big crowd of people who had come to meet parents and teachers. As our heroes walked through the crowd of students, almost everyone greeted Gyu and some even offered her breakfast. This surprised her dad, and he figured her daughter was pretty popular at school. Lin Fen gets upset when one of the students brings her homework, which sparks his angry reaction. The little girl tries to escape without answering, but her alert father catches and stops her, waiting for an explanation. While the girl's father holds her by the collar, a passing schoolmate teases her above. The girl immediately retorts at the bully, calling him the wrong name, which angers the boy. But the boy is called by his uncle, which causes him to interrupt the verbal fight with the girl. As he runs away, the boy warns Gyu they're not done with their fight, after which Lin asks who the kid is. Turns out the boy is from the Van family of Jindu, a clan his father already despises for all the trouble they've caused. During the meeting, the little girl notices how Uncle Van Leong stares at them, and Lin realizes there's no escaping a clash with the Van family. At the same time, Miss Tan announced the test results, which placed Van Leong in second place. The boy was so thrilled about second place, he shouted it out to the whole class. His uncle, the heir to the Van family, seemed proud of his nephew according to everything he said. Flipping around, the boy boasted to Gyu, taunting her by saying he'd beaten her in the test results. Miss Tan announces first place to our Lin Gyu, which is when everyone realizes she's actually the top scorer. Wan Lei, unhappy with the test results, accuses Gyu of cheating, but then he's about to regret it. The boy keeps going on, blaming Gyu for always being late, not doing homework, manipulating everyone around her, and clearly copying on the exam, which means she's about to lose her temper. Gyu, already furious, doesn't back down and keeps arguing, only to find herself in a full-blown fight. The cheeky boy won't stop teasing her, which is when she finally snaps and grabs him by the neck. As usual, Gyu can't hold her anger in and swings her fist at the bully, grabbing the boy by the throat. The girl's behavior starts causing tension among the other parents, who demand the fight stop right away. But the little kid won't back down, and with all her strength, she's ready to hit the boy. Just then, the father grabs the girl and pulls her away from Van Lai. Trying to calm things down, Lin comforts Gyu and smiles politely at the upset parents. Miss Tan sides with the girl, insisting everyone that Guo Guo didn't cheat, trying to end the argument. Half an hour later, Miss Tan tells our heroes that Van Lai's uncle is inviting them to lunch to apologize for what happened. Lin Fen clearly doesn't want this meeting, but the little girl is eager to hear an apology. Our heroes arrive at Mr. Wan's house and meet each other at the dining table. Guo Guo sat down at the table calmly and started demanding an apology, which she had come for. Remembering his promise, Mr. Wan asked Wan Lai to apologize to the girl, but the boy didn't want to do it at all. The determined girl wants to hear an apology directly from her bully. The girl's father decided to calm her down and asked Mr. Wan if he needed their help. The man needed their help, but he only realized how much they'd helped Mr. Tan after hearing about it. The boy, who had heard about Lin Ni's abilities, agreed with his uncle and called our heroes conmen, but Lin Fen just asked why they were needed. It turned out no doctor could help the man, so they recommended Guo Guo instead. Seeing a good future and friendship with the Wan family, Feng offered his help and arranged for future visits. Overjoyed, Mr. Wan thanked Lin Fen and Guo Guo, but Guo Guo pouted, not liking how the adults acted. On Sunday, Mr. Wan arrived at our hero's house, bringing gifts full of gold and pushing a wheelchair with a sick old woman. Lin was so stunned by the gift that all he could see were the glowing gold coins. The man brought the sick person to our hero, but left her in the care of Lin Fanyu and Guo Guo. Just moments later, the little girl was examining the sick woman in the house's room. After checking the woman, the girl guessed she was only 40, though she looked like an 80-year-old grandmother because of slow blood circulation and Hutchinson-Gilford syndrome. Mr. Wan's wife aged 50 years in one night 5 years ago, and the man hoped the little girl could cure her. The little girl turns out to be able to heal the woman with her father's help, which is when Mr. Wan is ready to pay them whatever they want. The woman needed daily treatment, so the man immediately started looking for a house nearby our heroes. In an instant, the neighbor's house was Mr. Wan's property, which left the father and daughter in. Before the treatment, the little girl warned that she would insert needles into the woman's body, and it would hurt, so Mr. Wan suggested his wife bite the guard standing nearby. Then Guo Guo applied her secret 9-needle technique, rapidly thrusting them into the patient's body. Those watching cheered enthusiastically, praising the girl's skills. She listed the herbs needed for the decoction, and the man immediately started searching for these plants. He couldn't find the rare herbs, so the girl offered to take some from her father's supplies. In exchange for the herbs, Mr. Wan offers Mr. Lin a suitcase full of cash, but Lin Feng refuses to take it. The man shows immense gratitude to our hero, while the little girl remains upset for not getting the suitcase of money. Sitting at the same table, Lin Feng asks Mr. Wan about the Lin family from Jingdu. Assuming Lin has issues with that family, he offers his help, but the man just wants to know more about the relationship between the Wan and Lin families. Their friendship turns out to be fake, and the Wan family fears the Lin family, warning our hero to be careful around them. Guo Guo runs out screaming while holding a jade pendant her new aunt gave her. Mr. Wan realizes his wife really liked the girl, and noticing her pendant, asks her to keep it safe. The girl's father, interested in the pendant, asks to see it. Looking at the pendant, he figures out it's a healing stone that can preserve youth, proving once again the correctness of his friendship with the Wan family. It's nighttime, little Guo Guo is completely exhausted, but she's happy Mr. Wan paid for the treatment even though her father made her treat the woman for free. Our heroes were exhausted lying on the couch when suddenly the phone rang. Lin Feng picked up the phone, only to find that the call was from Yue Kaiyan. Her voice shaking, she begged them to come over, but her grandfather was again on the edge of life and death. Our heroes, flustered, immediately took off, rushing to help the Tan family. Arriving at the scene, they saw the old man unconscious, lying in bed. Finding no one else, they started checking Mr. Tan's condition. The little girl approached the old man to check his heartbeat and pulse, holding his wrist. The little girl checks on his condition, but ends up realizing they didn't make it in time to save him. She'll try to keep his heartbeat steady while Dad handles the rest of the healing. Spotting some random object, he smashes it with a coin in a flash. The object built into the lamps above the bed cracks with a loud crash. It turns out to be a security camera, and our hero figures out someone must have set everything up. Scared for the old man's life, the little girl begs Dad to do something to make sure he survives. Lin Fen checked his grandfather and noticed his insides were damaged by some martial artist who attacked the helpless old man. Our hero pulled out a set of silver dragon needles and told Guo Guo to watch the door so no one could interfere. He quickly drove the needles into Mr. Tan's body, but then realized the old man's heart was already failing. After finishing the procedure, Lin Fen managed to make the old man's heart beat weakly, only to find it was too late. Guo Guo heard someone approaching the room, while her father continued the treatment to fully heal the old man's body. The girls stepped out into the corridor and saw Uncle Tan's family member, the one who tried to kill the old man last time. The man hid behind the stranger, but Guo Guo blocked their way into the room. The grumpy guy snapped his teeth and told the little girl to stay out of his way. The man accused the girl of trying to kill his father, and the little girl immediately ran toward him. The girl, hurt by the accusations, swung at the man and landed a powerful kick. Protecting the old man, the girl kept firmly guarding the room. The stranger attacked the girl, stunned by her abilities and wanting to fight her. The girl attacks back, wanting to punish the guy who attacked the old man, only to realize he's sure he can beat her. The girl's knee and the guy's fist collide, causing his bones to break and crack. The girl lands calmly while the shocked guy can't believe what just happened. The little girl smiles calmly holding a candy, asking how this tough guy wants to die. Not giving up on beating the girl, the guy charges at her again. He swings his fist at her with unreal speed, but she manages to dodge just in time. She hits the guy in the stomach with a punch, wanting to get revenge for the old man. It turns out this guy is from the Zia family, and the girl asks how he's connected to Zia Donhee, who ends up being his uncle. This news doesn't scare the girl at all, and wanting to take revenge on the scum, she pulls out her needle, which scares the guy senseless. The girl's father stretches and yawns, working out his shoulders, and exits the room, almost finishing treating the old man. Guo finds out that Miss Tan was kidnapped by these scoundrels, and they specifically brought our family here to kill them. Our hero condemns the cowardly Mr. Tan, who cries in fear and begs to be left alone. Miss Tan bursts into the room, completely unaware that she's walking into a setup. Seeing Miss Tan, the girl asks her what to do with the culprit, who's weeping and begging for mercy. The sound of Grandpa's coughing from inside the room makes the woman rush over to check on him. Without letting the scoundrel go, the little girl hands him over to Grandpa to punish his son as he sees fit. Kneeling on the floor, the son pleads with the old man to forgive him, but Guo cruelly accuses the scoundrel, which earns Lin Fen's disapproval. So our heroes waited outside for Grandpa's verdict, only to find Mr. Tan forgiving his son, and finally Lin Fen prescribes medicine for the old man. Our hero woke up the next morning, glancing at the time on his phone. The clock read 9 in the morning, snapping him out of his sleep instantly. He leaped out of bed, sprinting to wake up Guo while rushing to get dressed on the way. He burst out of the room in just his underwear, catching Miss Lin off guard with his messy appearance. Turns out Guo had already left for school, leaving Miss Lin with a spare key, and she came to Lin Fen with a favor to ask. Miss Lin's request was awkward, asking our hero to be her boyfriend, which left him flustered and confused. Miss Lin explains that this is necessary to scare off her fiancé and break up the engagement her family arranged. Lin reacts uncertainly, but eventually agrees to help her remember how many problems her daughter caused the woman. Cheerfully, Miss Lin offers our hero to prepare for a date she'll set up a little later. Sometime later in a cafe, the woman was met by her fiancé, determined to win her heart. Hearing Miss Lin's voice, he turns around and sees her walking hand in hand with our hero. Lin Feng jokingly teases the guy's perfume scent, which makes Yin laugh. He goes berserk, condemning the girl for being in a relationship with another man in front of his fiancé, accusing her of disrespecting his family. Yin replies, wanting to clarify that the Lin family's choice doesn't mean she has to marry him, and she already has a boyfriend. This really pisses off and surprises Ziahu, since Lin Fan already has a daughter. Here Guo runs up to our heroes, calling Miss Lin mommy, and Lin tells the girl that this guy wants to take her mom away. After hearing those words, the little girl charges at Ziahu with her fists, shouting that he shouldn't take her mom, drawing attention from onlookers. The guy pushes the girl away, accusing Miss Lin of having a child behind his back, comparing her to her sister. The woman, furious at his words, swings at him ready to slap him, but only to find her face smacked instead. Lin swiftly hits Ziahu with a dark look on his face, warning him for speaking that way. After getting hit in the stomach by Lin Fan, the guy threatened to get revenge for his arrogance, but Lin Fan just shrugged it off, taking Miss Lin and the girl with him. Back home, Miss Lin asks why Guo calls her mom, and Lin quickly comes up with an excuse saying the girl calls all female friends mom. But feels somehow connected to the girl and begs Lin Fan to tell the truth. He realizes it's pointless to hide the truth about Guo's mother anymore, and decides to tell the woman everything. The girl didn't hear him as he stepped out onto the balcony, but he told Miss Lin that her sister Wei Wei was the mother of Guo, which shocked the woman. Lin's brother Tian once seriously injured our hero, but Wei Wei saved him and Guo survived because she was hidden away. When Wei Wei left to train, she started a relationship with our hero and was already engaged when she gave birth to their daughter, so her family was furious. The family's head took her home, put her under house arrest, but she defied her parents and looked for our hero and her daughter. Slightly angry at Lin Fen for her sister's fate, she wondered why he hadn't shown up sooner. But he only asked her to keep everything secret, even though her sister had been waiting for him for 6 years. Lin Fan said the time wasn't right yet, but one day he'd stand before her, and for now he just clutched the tin can with anger. He wanted to prove to Lin's family he was a faithful man and worthy of her, but Miss Lin still didn't understand him at that moment, and Guo called them to help with the cooking. Our hero lazily lay on the couch, listening to the cooking happen on the kitchen counter. Then there was a knock on the door, and Mr. Wan and his wife arrived, coming for an acupuncture session. The little girl happily greeted her maternal grandmother and patient, but the woman seeing Yin by her side, whom she called Mom, was surprised by what was happening. Mr. Wan laughed, saying the family ties in this family were really complicated. Injire and Yin laughed as they discussed what was happening, while the little girl ran off after the needles. Mr. Wan ate the dumplings prepared by Injire and Guo, then started talking to Lin Fei. He told about an auction coming up in Jindu in a few days and invited our hero, who wasn't really interested in showing up anywhere. To get him more interested, the man showed Lin a list of rare items that would be at the auction. Seeing the snow lotus on the list, which is very rare, our hero got interested. Noticing Lin Fei's interest, the man added that there would be many priceless treasures there, but Lin still wasn't going to agree. Mr. Wan tells our hero that the snow lotus is a gift for Lin, and she'll get it if she goes to the auction. Little Go Wu was again about to help Miss Lin with her company, which once more had a great reputation. But then Miss Lin's secretary interrupted the idol, informing her that the suppliers unexpectedly decided to stop working with the company. The phone rang, and after picking it up, the woman heard a kidnapper ordering her to bring Lin to a cafe in the south of the city, or else her company would be completely destroyed. Realizing it was Zia Hu's work, she got angry, but the person on the other end hung up the phone. Thinking about what to do, she asked Little Go Wu to help her. It was 3 in the morning when Zia Hu showed up with some guy waiting for revenge against Lin Fei. When he turned at the creak of the door, he saw Yin with Guo, which annoyed him because the little girl responded to his displeasure by saying he'd ordered Lin to be brought, but didn't specify which one. A middle-aged man pushed the guy aside from the table and asked who Guo was. Zia Hu said she was his fiancée Yin and pointed at the girl, calling her Lin Fen's illegitimate daughter and Miss Lin's child. Annoyed, the girl swung at the guy, wanting to punish him for his behavior. But she didn't get a chance to hit the bully because the man standing next to her stepped in for her. He assessed the girl's power and asked about her family, but then got beaten up by Jihu and lay on the floor. With a calm expression, Guo decided to make up a story about her powerful family, trying to scare the man. But the man didn't believe the girl, since all secret families stay in the shadows, and charged at the little kid. The girl charged back, colliding with the man in a fight. From the powerful hit, the girl flew sideways, leaving a fiery trail on the ground. After testing the girl's strength, the man hesitated, wondering if she was really a member of the hidden family. The girl got hit hard, but then she embarrassed the man for daring to attack a little kid. But the man didn't stop and charged at the little girl again with huge speed. Justifying himself by saying she was an unusual child, he hit the girl again. The girl had a really hard time standing her ground against the man's blows. He kept brutally beating the girl, landing blow after blow without stopping. All the girl could do was cover herself with her hands, unable to land any hits back because of the man's incredible speed, mentally calling for her father's help. Someone zips through the cafe at high speed, barely missing the kids. The girl's father arrives just in time, saving her and retaliating against the attacker. He condemns the attacker for daring to harm a child, something that's unthinkable for a family as powerful as the Zia family. Our hero lands just one punch, but it's enough to scare the villains and weaken them. The little girl, lying on the floor with cuts and bruises, is overjoyed to see her father worried about her. Beaten and broken, Zia Hu spots Lin Feng and begs his uncle to kill him. His uncle slaps him across the head, orders him to kneel and apologize to our hero, but only to realize he's already too late. Lin Feng refuses to hear an apology and attacks the man who wronged his daughter again, not knowing that the real battle is just beginning. At the same time, Zio Hu's uncle is slammed against the wall with such force that cracks form in the wall, which means he's about to be crushed. Our hero, with a dark and furious look, wants to take revenge for his daughter and punish the attacker, but he's about to get wrecked. Seeing his uncle in such a helpless position, Zio Hu goes into a state of shock, only to find himself in the middle of a trap. And right then, the uncle bows down before our heroes, admitting his guilt and begging for forgiveness, but the little girl has already prepared her needles for punishing the scum. The building gets surrounded by police, ordering everyone to drop their weapons and quickly moving toward the scene of the incident. A young cop bursts into the cafe, recognizes Yin and tries to figure out what she's doing there. Miss Lin, of course, tries to act innocent as the police examine the horribly injured Zia Hu and the uncle stuck in the wall. The police send the Zia family to the hospital, and the young cop grabs our hero. She quickly slaps the handcuffs on his wrist. Arresting our hero, she drags him to the precinct while he stumbles behind and awkwardly tries to explain himself. Lin clutches his chest, realizing he used too much force this time. While the police try to scrape Mr. Zia out of the wall, the poor cafe worker cries in the background, grieving over the ruined wall. A police officer escorts our hero out of the cafe and shoves him into a squad car. Sitting next to him, she watches how intensely our hero stares at her, which makes her wonder. Continuing to stare at the police officer, Lin answers her question by asking the girl if she's sick, which causes a furious reaction from the girl, who hits Lin for his rudeness. Lin explains in detail the symptoms the girl has to prove his innocence and rightness, only to realize she's not sick at all. The girl reacts even more violently, beating Lin and calling him a pervert, but he keeps crying, trying to prove he's just a doctor. Lin gives his statement for a long time at the precinct, and is about to leave when the police stop him because someone came to talk to him. A stranger enters the office, catching Lin off guard and making him curious. The man says he's heard a lot about Lin and asks him to stay away from Yin-er, saying Lin isn't her match. Lin gets angry because he's heard these words before, from his family who still act like snobs just like 6 years ago. Lin shakes his head when the man asks if he really wants to become an enemy of his family. The man, hearing about our hero's fighting skills, wonders if old man Zia was defeated with just one strike, but Lin says it wasn't his strength, just that the old man was weak. Smirking slyly, the man warns our hero not to fight his family and suggests a safer path. He leaves his business card with the name Lin Xiu on the table and tells Lin Fen to work for him, and Lin asks if this is why he brought him here. At first, it wasn't in the man's plan, but eventually he changed his mind and offered Lin to work for the Lin family. As he leaves the office, he asks Lin to call him once he's made a decision and reminds him to stay away from Yin-er, which worries our hero. The cop hands Lin some papers to sign so he can leave the precinct. Lin looks one last time at the girl's chest and asks her to call if she needs his treatment. But hearing another mention of her chest, the cop goes wild and kicks our hero out. After sending Guo home, Yin-er meets Lin at the precinct, notices his pale and painful look, but he just waves it off. Sitting in the car, she starts apologizing to our hero since her family was involved in all of this, and Lin asks the girl not to blame herself. Then he asks if she knows Lin Xiaohu, only to find out the man was her sister's assistant. Lin Yu helped her sister a lot and accompanied Yin-er to Qinghai, but he was also a strong assistant. Lin Yu told the girl about her conversation with the man, and she figured out her sister was in trouble, so she sent her assistant to Lin Yu Fen. Our hero covered his eyes with his hand, pale from thinking about the Lin family and his lover Wei Wei. Yin-er warned Lin, worrying about the guys, that since her family knew about their existence with Guo, they should keep their distance. Lin Yu Fen arrived home, invited the girl for tea, but she refused and went back to work at the company. He went into the house and saw little Guo lying lazily on the couch, tired after the fight. The father scolded the girl for her poor kung fu performance, but only to realize this fight's loss would be her harsh lesson. The girl justified herself by saying she was still a child and would one day destroy the old man in one move, but Lin took it as an excuse for her laziness. Lin coughed violently, clutching his chest and pale even more, only for the girl to panic at the sight of her father's condition. His face twisted in severe pain as he saw his father's state, which made the little girl scream in fear. The man shook all over from pain while the girl tried to figure out what was happening, not knowing it was an old injury. Realizing it was an old injury from her father, she bolted out of the room to fetch the needles and help him right away. Lena knocked her father unconscious with a loud crash as Guo stepped away. The little girl lifted her father and placed him on the couch, getting ready to heal him. In one swift motion, she drove 9 needles into his body, trying to help him as fast as she could. A fiery glow surrounded our hero, and the healing process began, helping him come to his senses. After some time, our hero regained consciousness and looked the same as before, but he had really scared his daughter. Lin returned to his confident attitude, and finally healed, he started pulling the silver needles out of himself, folding them into a box. Lin brings up an auction coming up in a couple days, asking Gogo to help dig up some info, while chatting about the pharmacopoeia. The little girl examines our hero, only to realize he has kidney failure, advising him to take kidney chi supplements. Since it's already late, the father sends the tired little Gogo to bed. Left alone, he reflects on his seizures, thanking the silver dragon set that managed to help him. He got up from the bed, staggered, and grabbed his head from exhaustion. The exhausted man couldn't stand anymore and flopped back onto the couch. Our hero was busy making some kind of remedy, throwing in all sorts of herbs into the pot. While Lin was preparing his medicine, the little girl came home from school, watching her father cook. She distracted him from cooking, wanting to tell him something important. The bored little girl didn't want to go to school anymore, thinking she already knew everything her father asked, including how many students were in her school. After hearing the answer, Lin Fen then asked the girl to name each student's name, which really annoyed Guo. Frustrated by her father's silly questions, the girl jumped on him, almost flipping the pot of finished medicine. The doorbell rings, pulling the girl away from her argument with her dad, and he asks her to go open it. Standing at the threshold was the very same police officer with lung disease who came in for treatment with Lin Fan. The little girl was surprised since the woman looked healthy to her. Lin immediately sent Guo to do her homework and called the woman upstairs for an exam. The little girl watched them nervously, deciding they couldn't be left alone in the room, so she called Miss Lin. Guo stood by the door and listened in on their conversation, hearing her dad ask Miss Bai to undress. The patient started undressing in the room, not fully understanding the hero's words, and took off her skirt instead of her top. Seeing the woman in a tank top, he noticed she was too small for it, and she reacted strongly to it, but Lin asked her to respect his profession. The little girl, unhappy, listens to their conversation and the whole treatment process. Blushing from frustration, Guo Guo called Miss Lin and lied, saying Lin Feng asked her to come. Behind the door, Miss Bai, blushing from embarrassment, endured the healing massage from our wonderful doctor. After some time, Yin arrived at the hero's house, was met by the girl and was taken upstairs to her father. They approach the door behind which a vague conversation is heard, but Lin's patient Miss Bai is the one who's begging to be dressed. The door opens and there stands Lin Feng with Miss Bai half-dressed, which leaves Yin flustered and concerned about what they were up to. The women recognize each other, surprised to find themselves in the hero's home. Lin Feng immediately starts explaining to Yin while Miss Bai stands unimpressed, assuming there was an affair between them and not wanting Lin Feng to meet Miss Lin. Trying to ruin their relationship, she starts flirting with our hero, mentioning how well he does full-body massages. Hearing this, Yin loses her temper, defending her sister's feelings and condemning Lin Feng for his inappropriate behavior. He started explaining that he was doing a massage for swelling, something he learned long ago to earn money for his daughter, only to realize she was confused about what he was actually doing. The police officer watching them wrongly thought Lin really liked Yin wondering why she had chosen him out of all the men. She slapped Lin's shoulder and said goodbye, claiming it was all a joke and she had truly come for treatment, but then she left without a word. Seeing the door slam shut behind the woman, Lin lost it and ran after her, not knowing she was already gone. He grabbed Guo Guo and threw her after the woman so she could collect the payment for the treatment, but she never made it. Then, as if nothing had happened, he turned to Yin to find out why she had suddenly decided to visit him, only to learn she was chasing the same woman. The guys were talking about joining the auction as Lin and Guo Guo planned to go, but they didn't know the real reason behind it yet. Miss Lin tried to convince our hero not to go because her family would be watching him, and she didn't want to repeat her sister's fate. After hearing this, Lin Feng nervously asked if Miss Lin's family really wanted to get rid of him. He asked Yin to cover for him until their connection to her sister was uncovered, but then a little girl ran into the house with payment from Miss Bai. The little girl was waving piles of money, shrieking with joy, and calling adults to play with the money. But to keep distance and avoid misunderstanding, Miss Lin decided to refuse the girl, just like the boy's father, who reminded her about the unfinished homework. Guo Guo, upset at the adults, called them heartless, but only to realize they were just trying to protect her. Couldn't stand watching Guo Guo cry, so she agreed to go play with her, making the little girl happy. At the mall, the group started playing arcade games, winning Guo Guo new toys one after another. With a bag full of toys, they made the arcade owner worry that they'd empty out all his machines. Guo Guo decided to stop playing and taking toys, hoping to calm the worried owner down, not knowing he was about to offer a deal. Smiling falsely, he offered them a deal to take some toys and sell the rest to him, so he could refill his machines again. Lin Feng found out how much the man was willing to pay for the toys, only to learn he was offering 1 yuan per item. The price didn't sit well with our heroes, so they grabbed all the toys and headed for the exit. The sneaky man called the guards, claiming the guys had stolen his money and all the merchandise. The guards surrounded them, but the man kept screaming he'd call the police if they didn't pay for the toys. Our heroes kept walking toward the exit, not caring anymore about this man's complaints. The angry man grabbed Guo Guo by the collar, not letting go until she paid him back. Little Miss couldn't take the way she was treated anymore, so she spun around and glared at the man with a threatening look. Shouts erupted, and within a minute the man was lying beaten, begging to be left alone, and finally let the girl take everything. But just then the surrounding guards attacked the girl, wanting to send her whole family to the police. After dealing with the guards, the girl attracted even more guards, who were already speeding toward our heroes. Lin Feng realized they couldn't handle such a crowd of guards, so he grabbed Miss Lin's hand and rushed toward the exit. The abandoned little girl also hurried off, running after her father who had carelessly left her behind. Lin runs out of the mall, catches a taxi that screeches to a halt with a loud grinding sound. Once everyone's inside, he tells the driver to head to the Western District. The tires screech and the car rockets forward, speeding so fast it seems like it's tearing away from the ground. The car grinds around the corner, leaving the heroes confused and puzzled. The driver's clearly heading the wrong way, and when they turn the corner, a man with a gun is waiting, pointing the barrel at the back seat. Spotting him, Lin Feng immediately orders everyone to duck down. A loud crack echoes as a bullet shatters the back windows of the car. Our heroes, unharmed and crouched low, sit in the car while the driver smirks suspiciously. Lin Feng stands up, picks up a glass shard from the neighbor's window. He hurls the shard with force and speed toward the shooter. The shard hits the attacker's neck, knocking him down and scaring his partner. Then, holding a large shard to the driver's throat, he orders him to drive. The shooter tried to fire again at them to cause damage, but the second one stopped him because they knew they couldn't pull it off. After driving away from the scene, Lin interrogated the driver sent by Lin, who was incredibly scared and ready to spill everything he knew. The man begged Lin to hide the shard because it was scaring him and getting in the way of his story. It turned out this man was from the assassin association hired by the Lin family. And specifically, this man, who was crying and revealing all the information to our hero, was in charge of reconnaissance. Trying to butter up Lin and change the threatening mood, he praised his ability and invited him to join their association. Lena's frustration only grew, and pushing the shard closer to the man's throat, he asked how many more people had been sent after him, only to find out there were another 12. Leaving the man in his underwear, our hero climbed into his car, and the guys sped off before. On her phone, Yin-Er received notifications from her sister, who begged her to stay away from Lin Fen, but then, with a worried look, she pondered how Wei Wei had no idea that Lin's family was chasing her husband and daughter, which is when. Seeing the woman's worried expression, little Guo Guo asked if everything was okay with her, but then she waved it off, saying she was just thinking about work at the company, and sent little Guo Guo off with her father. She steps out of the taxi, waves goodbye to Lin Feng and slips something into his palm. In-Er suddenly hands him a slip of paper with Wei Wei's number on it and asks him to be careful. Our hero stands there for a while staring at the paper thinking about Wei Wei's number, but the little girl interrupts his thoughts. The next day a knock echoes through Lin's door, and when he opens it, Lin Feng meets Mr. Wan, who has come to pick him up for the auction in Jindu. Acting as if he hadn't forgotten about the auction, he says he's just finishing up packing. 10 minutes later, father and daughter exit the house with a huge backpack full of medicine, which Lin Feng hopes to sell at the auction. The whole group was heading back to the hotel after dinner, having a good time, especially little Go Wu after taking a sip of pineapple beer. While Wan Zhu and Guo Guo were heading back to the hotel, Lin was walking with Mr. Wan on his arm, going about their own business. Mr. Wan, laughing and blushing from the drink, called our hero over to have some fun. A while later, the guys ended up in a nightclub, where loud music was playing and people were dancing. While Lin, dazzled, was soaking in the strobe lights, a waiting acquaintance approached Mr. Wan. As the man entered a private room of the club, he introduced our Lin to his acquaintance as Bai Ci, calling him his named brother. The men shake hands, showing respect as they meet for the first time. The handshake turns out strong, hinting at a competitive vibe between them. Our hero is surprised by the strength, thinking he might be a master of combat. Our hero also felt his new acquaintance wanted to show off strength through the handshake, but didn't realize it. The men walk into the room, seeing a group of young girls waiting. While our hero was on his phone, a girl brought them drinks, then left, leaving the men alone. Mr. Wan starts a serious conversation with Lin Feng, wanting to get straight to business. He then turns his attention to the man, pointing out the jade vase in the photo. But it turns out he's not interested in the vase at all, only in the pill inside it, which can cure any illness. The seller of the pill is Bai Ci, who's singing karaoke with one of the girls at the same time. Lin finds out his named brother took him to Jindu so he could help confirm the pill's authenticity. After that, Mr. Wan calls Bai over to examine his merchandise. He sent all the girls out so no one could overhear their conversation. When they were alone, Bai told them that Lin's family had already bought the pill, and tomorrow's auction was just a formality. This news enraged Mr. Wan, and he gave the man a warning look, which was only to show that he couldn't fight with the powerful Lin family and had no choice but to comply. Raging, Mr. Wan knocked over Bai's glass and harshly ordered him to leave. The man didn't argue and started to leave, but before he could exit, our hero stopped him by standing up from his seat. Lin Feng stood up and told the man he wasn't letting him go, casting him a cold look. Bai didn't like Lin's commanding tone and stopped to sort things out with him. Lin Feng stepped closer and kept provoking the man by calling his family scum who couldn't keep their word. The unpleasant remarks about his family enraged the man, and he lunged at our hero, swinging his leg. But Lin managed to catch his leg midair with a strong grip, and then suddenly released it, forcing Bai to stretch his legs wide and sit down in a painful split. The man's body gives out and he writhes in pain on the floor, unable to escape anymore. Now our hero has nothing stopping him from quietly finding out where Bai Ci got that pill from. Lying on the floor shaking from pain, the man replies that this pill has been passed down through his family for generations. But not believing him, Lin grabs his hand and twists it, trying to force the truth out of the man while Mr. Wan tries to speak. Bai Ci starts screaming and crying, continuing to insist to merciless Lin that he's telling the truth. The terrified man collapses into a faint from our hero's interrogation. Finally hearing Mr. Wan, Lin learns that the Bai family could have blood ties to Sun Shimio, the creator of this pill, only to realize it might connect them to the drug's origins. Hearing this, our hero immediately lets go of helpless Bai Ci and starts thinking about how he can use this information to find clues about the pharmacopoeia. Mr. Wan thinks this beating will serve as a good lesson for the man who turned his back on them to work with the Lin family, but then he reveals it's meant to teach him a lesson. He also adds that as long as the Lins haven't taken the medicine yet, they still have a chance to get it, which means they're not out of the race yet. Lin Feng is surprised to find out the man actually has a backup plan to get the medicine, only to realize he's still figuring it out. But it turns out the man hasn't decided how to proceed yet because he's afraid to cross the Lins, and the group decides to check if the pill is real or not. Lin returns to Bai Ci, unsure what to do with his helpless body. Mr. Wan suggests leaving him to the cleaner and quickly getting out of the room. In the end, Lin pulls out a card with Bai's name and title as General Director of Bai Group. Looking at it, he figures out how to get more info from Bai's family to find the needed pharmacopoeia. The next day, our company heads to the auction house, anticipating the event. Father and daughter take seats far from Yin and others to avoid drawing extra attention. Little Guo sat in her place, noticing as members of the Zia family walked into the hall, the one she'd recently had a conflict with. Confident Zia, who arrived at the auction, flanked by his attendants. Seeing him, the girl was upset, realizing her bully was fine and looked completely healthy. The auction began and the host solemnly announced its start, revealing that this year's theme would be medicine. Our hero sat there thinking about how she'd sell her longevity pills, made for those who knew the right people. The host then introduced 3 great masters from the Huato family, experts in folk medicine from Jindu. 3 old men walked onto the stage with a wise and serious look. The girl assessed the strong energy of the masters, who according to her father are much older than any other family. It was time for the first lot, and they turned out to be red deer antlers, the only ones of their kind, which represented huge value. One of the masters presented them as a source of good circulation, making women more alluring and men more enduring. The host announced the starting bid at 500,000 yuan, adding that each raise had to be at least 100,000 more, and the bids immediately took off. A man sitting next to Guo placed a bid of 5 million yuan. He's confident in his win and calmly waits for the auction's outcome. But then the little kid raises a sign with 5.5 million, shocking the man sitting next to her. He doesn't get why the kid needs the deer antlers, so she says they're needed for her father. The people around them quietly laughed, making Lin feel awkward and sweat from embarrassment. In the end, the red deer antlers go to the little kid, Guo. While announcing the second lot, the man glares at the girl, hoping to get those antlers. She can't take his stare anymore and complains to her father, but he does nothing about the stranger's presence. After the first half of the auction ends, the stranger approaches our hero to settle things. He grabs Lena by the collar and pulls her close, but she seems completely unbothered and calm. The angry man protests over the hero's audacity to challenge the Chen family. Little Guo orders him to let go of her father, charging at him with a needle raised. In the next second, the girl drives her needle straight into the brute's neck. Dad thanks his daughter for the help, but the man struggles to pull the needle out of his neck. But then he suddenly grabs Guo by the collar. He swings his fist aiming for the little girl's face, wanting to exact his revenge with full force. Before he can land the punch, Miss Liang calls out to him, wanting to know how dare he touch her niece. Scared of the consequences, he starts nervously justifying himself, slapping the girl on the head. The Wang family glares at the scared man, ordering him to leave right then. Everyone around was surprised to see the Van family, not knowing where the stepdaughter came from, which is when she appeared. Ling's attempt to stay unnoticed failed, so Mr. Van called them and his daughter to the VIP zone to make sure nothing threatened them anymore. The host announces the second part of the auction, which consists of 2 parts, sales and exchange. Mr. Van explains to Ling that in the exchange part, owners will offer their items to the entire audience, on which people can exchange their collections. A commotion is heard in the hall as 2 familiar silhouettes walk past the rows, only to be identified later. The ones who arrived are Ling's familiar friend Zhu Hu and Bai Ci. Lin Yu notices Linfen sitting next to Wan, which surprises the man, while Bai Ci scowls at our hero, clearly unimpressed. After some time, the host announces the final prize, which all 5 families are eager to win. One of the masters removes the cloth from the last item, which turns out to be longevity pills. Examining the pill, he confirmed its authenticity, only to realize it can truly extend life and cure every illness. The other sages also confirmed the pill's authenticity, which means it's real and powerful. Watching the scene, Lin couldn't stay still, wanting to show off his own pills, which were made using the same formula as this one. The host announced the price for a pill at 50 million yuan, and a bunch of people started throwing out their own bids. As the auction went on, Mr. Wan put up 200 million yuan, ready to pay whatever it took to heal his father. Hearing those huge numbers, our hero regretted not bringing more pills with him. But then Mr. Lin offered $500 million for a pill, shocking our hero even more. Just as Mr. Wan was about to put up $600 million, Lin stopped him, convincing him that the pill wasn't worth the money. But the man just sadly lowered his head, telling everyone he had to get that medicine. Lin comforts the man, promising to get the pills for Mr. Wan. Mr. Wan gives Lin Fan a confused look, not entirely believing his promise. But it turns out Mr. Wan simply didn't want the pills to end up with the Lin family, as they could extend their prosperity for at least several decades. Part of the auction sales are complete, the host announces part of the exchange, but the auction offer no longer interests the saddened Mr. Wan. At that moment, Lin rummages through his jacket and pulls out a vase similar to the one holding the pills. Showing off the vase, Lin proudly smiles, explaining he did it in the style of the great Sun Yim. Mr. Wan is surprised and doesn't know where Lin got them, so Lin tells him he made them himself. After giving Mr. Wan 3 pills, he hopes to trade the remaining ones for the next batch at the auction. The man thanks our hero with tears in his eyes, promising to help and protect him. The lots are displayed for everyone to see. The host invites guests to look them over and trade them for something of their own, so our hero heads toward them. Looking over the lots, Lin finds nothing interesting for himself, yawning from boredom. But as he walks between the rows, he notices some scroll that immediately catches his attention. He stares closely and loses his ability to speak, stunned to find this at an auction. The lot turns out to be that very pharmacopoeia of Shen Nguyen, and our hero beams with joy at finding it. Studying the pharmacopoeia, Lin realizes it's only half of what he'd hoped for. Here, Lin hears a familiar voice from Bai Ci, who turns out to be the owner of this pharmacopoeia. Lin Feng asks him to name the price, but the man isn't interested in money and asks for apologies and bows for yesterday's insult. But then Mr. Wan interrupts, threatening Bai if he doesn't stop laughing at Lin, which gets to the man and he agrees to follow the rules. Mr. Wan is curious about what Bai wants in exchange for his pharmacopoeia. Smiling slyly, the man asks for an elixir of longevity, confident that no one else can get it. But to his surprise, Lin Feng agrees to the trade, planning to pull out the pill from his jacket pocket. After bringing out the vase, he pulls the pill out of it with a completely calm expression. Lin casually throws the pill at Bai, hoping to quickly grab the bamboo plates from the pharmacopoeia. But Bai Ci ignores Lin's gesture, doubting whether it's real, thinking the hero is trying to trick him. Lin tells the man he wasted his time taking the pill because it's pretty expensive. Bai replies that if the pill is real, Bai Ci will hand over the pharmacopoeia and call him father. Lin focused on Bai Ci's words to draw attention from the crowd and make sure he didn't try to avoid losing. The scoundrel kept laughing at the hero, claiming such a fool couldn't possibly have these pills. In response, Lin suggested asking the Huado masters to verify the pill's authenticity. 3 old men were approaching the men to find out what was happening, and upon seeing them, he offered the masters to check his pills. They picked up the pill vase and caught the familiar scent, which left them stunned. The old man took a pill from the vase, hoping to examine it quickly. As he twisted the pill in his hands, the master marveled at its glow and freshness. In the end, the amazed masters of Huado confirmed the pill's authenticity, praising the doctor who made it. The surrounding people, along with Bai Ci, couldn't believe the outcome of the event. Appreciating the pill's value, the masters wanted to know who created it, but Lin decided to keep the creator's name a secret. The old folks nodded in understanding, assuming it might be a reclusive type who doesn't care about people's attention. Surrounding our hero, they started pleading with him to show generosity and give them a pill. Our hero clearly didn't want to give away such a valuable pill for free. But out loud, he couldn't say that and tried to make excuses to avoid the persistent old folks. The old folks kept trying to get the pill from Lin, praising his generosity and kindness. But seeing this, the little kid Guo immediately embarrassed the old folks, not wanting to give the pill away for free. They acted like nothing had happened, but Lin defended the old men, saying they wouldn't try to get her for free. One of the masters offered our hero a seed of the golden lotus in exchange for a pill. Lin accepted the offer, taking the seed and admitting he hadn't expected anything in return. Twirling the lotus seed bottle in his hands, he was surprised people were willing to give so much for such tiny pills. The old man tried to take back the bottle after Lin said he wanted nothing in return, but Lin had already hidden it in his jacket pocket. The little girl was once again embarrassed by the old men's behavior, but Lin asked her to accept it, since the masters, though shameless, held a special status in society. After the masters left, the man approached Bai Ci this time, wanting to trade the pharmacopoeia for Lin Fan's miraculous pill. Lin took the bamboo slices and as he left reminded him that he'd already given him the pill and didn't have any more. The little girl explained that the pill Bai didn't catch had fallen somewhere under his feet, and he should have searched for it or bought a new one for 500 million yuan. Bai Ci immediately bolted to the ground in search of the precious pill. While the man was crawling at the feet of people, the little girl shouted at the woman that he was trying to sneak under her skirt. Satisfied with her tease, the little girl giggled while the angry woman beat up Bai Ci. After the auction, our heroes find Bai Ci sitting on the floor crying, thinking that Lin Yi won't need his services anymore if they find out the longevity pill is common. But then he's surprised to learn it's not as simple as that. The little girl approaches him and offers a candy to calm the man down, only to realize it's not just a sweet gesture. The candy cheers him up, and he thanks the little girl for such a kind gesture, not knowing that it's actually a poisoned treat. As Bai Ci takes the candy in his mouth, Guo Guo demands 100,000 yuan from him, revealing that the candy was made from poison, which is when he realizes he's in serious trouble. For the antidote, she asks for the second half of the pharmacopoeia, but Bai Ci says the second half was destroyed years ago, which means there's no way to undo the poison. Hearing this, the girl is no longer interested in the conversation, turns around, and heads toward the exit, leaving Bai Ci in a desperate situation. Guo Guo leaves, telling everyone the candy wasn't poison, but she just tricked the poor guy. Lin Feng finds out the second half was destroyed, and he reluctantly leaves the auction. On the street, Mr. Wan meets them, inviting the heroes to go to a banquet. Soon they arrive at the fancy Wan family mansion to rest after the auction. It turns out the banquet was set up by Mr. Wan's father specifically for our hero. They're greeted by an old man, expecting them to be the miracle-working medics his son told him about. Old man smokes a cigarette, grinning widely at our hero, happy to see them again. The Van family, full of dishes, shares a meal with our heroes, toasting to Lin Fan's health. While everyone enjoys the banquet, Lin assesses the old man's health, figuring out the symptoms of a serious illness. Looking at the old man, he realizes why Wan Feng wanted the longevity pills so badly. Colliding glasses with the Van family master, he discovers the old man has a weak pulse, dry skin, and a cold hand. After that, he advises Mr. Wan to take care of himself, since the pills can only prolong his life a few years, but can't cure his serious illness. Then, chewing and slobbering, little Guo Guo adds that the illness is still curable. Since she was really hungry, little Guo Guo wanted to eat first and then heal the old man, but excited Wan Feng calmly waited for her to finish her meal. Full-stomached, Guo Guo ordered the preparation of silver needles to examine the old man. The Wan family didn't have silver needles, but they did have expensive gold ones. The needles were in Mr. Wan's collection, bought from an antique shop which interested the little girl. The servant unrolled a cloth roll with the needles, showing them to the guests. The girl twisted one of the needles in her hands, disappointed only to notice they were heavily oxidized. She handed one of the gold needles to her father, not knowing he'd be the one to check them over. He examined the needle carefully, his eyes focused and intense. Sniffing the needle, he figured out it was from the Fu Sea Gold set, which surprised him because that set is kept together with the Dragon Silver set. The layer mistakenly called rust was actually a protective layer of clay, which can be removed after the needles are calcined, which is what our heroes are about to do. Lin Feng held the needles over the fire in the fireplace for half an hour, while the others watched closely, waiting for the result. The man pulls out a gleaming golden needle, completely rid of the layer of mud. Looking at the needle, little Guo Guo beams with delight, begging her father to give her this golden treasure. With the needle in hand, little Guo Guo approaches the old man, offering to make a deal with her. The deal involved treating the old man in exchange for the needles, and the old man agrees to the terms, ready to give her the whole set. Guo Guo begins treating Mr. Wan, hearing his positive response to the deal, but Wan Feng asks to check the pulse, which the father had already measured during dinner. So little Guo Guo only confirms the old man's symptoms, to convince everyone of the accuracy of her treatment. She starts treating him, swinging the golden needle above Mr. Wan's body, only to realize he'd just given his approval. She plunges the remaining needles in with incredible speed, piercing the old man's chest, but then he collapses from the pain. After the procedure, Mr. Wan tensed up, closing his eyes and clenching his teeth, not knowing that the treatment had gone wrong. A few seconds later, he spits out a mouthful of blood, splattering it right in Van Fen's face, which is when he finally realizes how bad it got. After the incident, the man asks what's wrong with his father, and the little girl, with her usual professionalism, explains the old man's lung hemorrhage. Spitting out that blood, he felt a lot better and happily thanks the little girl Guo Guo, only to find out the damage was already done. The little girl, having tasted the food, offered her help in exchange for something from his collection, which made Lin Feng scold her. To finish the treatment, Lin signed a herbal medicine prescription for Mr. Wan to keep his health in check. Then the little girl asked for deer antlers, which turned out to be saved for her grandmother, much to Wan Fen's delight. To heal the woman's body, the girl wrote out a recipe and prepared a special decoction. After finishing all the tasks, the men sat happily in the hall, drinking tea and chatting about their lives. Just then, Lin's phone rang, and when he answered, he heard Yue Kaiyan informing him that Yin had gone missing. He snapped to attention, but then realized he needed to rush to Miss Lin's aid immediately. Wan told Tan that Guo Guo needed to go to school, so he informed them they should leave right away. Lin promised to visit them soon, but Wan's family vowed to help her whenever she needed them, only to realize they'd never get the chance. The men said goodbye to Guo Guo, hoping to see her again soon, though she lived far away. Just seconds later, Wan ordered Fan to send Guo Guo and Lin Fan home by helicopter. The group flew to Xinjiang in a private helicopter, and Guo Guo, thrilled, thanked the old man for her first flight. Lin was thinking about Yin and what might have happened in Xinhua as they flew, while the little girl carefully watched the views from the window. As soon as he landed, the man rushed to Yue Kaiyan, asking about Yin and demanding they call the police. Standing beside Yue Kaiyan was Miss Bai, who told Lin Fen there was no point calling the police since Yin had been taken by Lin's people, news that scared Guo and made her try to ask her father what had happened. But her father wasn't answering her and was trying to learn more about Yin-er's kidnapping, only to find out Miss Bai had seen with her own eyes how Yin-er was taken by Lin's people. The man wasn't ready to get involved in Lin's family affairs, so he couldn't figure out how to help her. That answer really upset Miss Bai since Yin-er had been taken exactly because of him, while Guo was about to call Mr. Wan for help. Lin took the girl's phone without getting involved in the Van family's business, only to realize she was the one who had called him. With the phone in hand, the man prepared to leave, dragging the girl along with him, but then hesitated. He decided to go home to think of a better plan, but his face showed clear anxiety, which meant he wasn't ready to let go. Miss Bai didn't understand his behavior and got angry at the man for his inaction, not knowing he wasn't really Yin-er's boyfriend and Guo wasn't their daughter. Embarrassed, Miss Tan tried to awkwardly explain to the woman that things weren't as she thought, but the woman wasn't listening. The upset kids were already home, Guo missing her mom, and hearing that, Lin once again told the girl that Yin-er wasn't her mother. He tells the girl that Miss Lin is his aunt and her mother's sister, but the little one keeps not believing her father. According to the girl, her father is lying to her because he's afraid to save Yin-er from the Lin family. He calms down the angry girl, patting her on the shoulder, insisting that he'll definitely save Miss Lin. Lin explains to the girl that they can't go unprepared, so while she goes to sleep, he'll come up with a plan to rescue Yin-er. Wanting to help her father, the girl asks to be woken up as soon as he comes up with a plan, so he sends her to bed and stays to think about the rescue plan. If it weren't for our hero's old injury, he could have tried fighting the lines, but because of this injury, he might end up being a colleague or dying. Lin pulls out the pharmacopoeia, hoping to find the 18-needle technique of Shen Nun and check if it's real. Unfolding the scroll, he finally finds it, completely surprised by what he sees. He starts studying the technique, carefully reading through the ways it can be used. It turns out the scroll only contains the first 3 needle strikes of this technique. But even these first 3 strikes are better than nothing, so our hero didn't lose hope. The next morning, the girl came down to the hall and felt a terrible smell while Lin Feng slept on the couch. Turns out the stench was coming from Dad, who woke up from sleep confused and not knowing why. Smelling the odor, he blinked awake in surprise. Jumping up from his seat, Lin couldn't figure out what was causing such a strong smell. Lin thought it might be from Shen Nuen's acupuncture, which could expose all his body's impurities, but before realizing that, Guo sent Dad to wash it away immediately. While he headed to the shower, the girl noticed a bamboo scroll that caught her attention. Finding a technique that cleanses the bone marrow and strengthens bones, the little girl wanted to use it to become stronger. Lin Feng steps out of the shower a few minutes later, flexing his newly built muscles from the night before. Guo is stunned, not understanding how it all happened so fast as her father brags about his new power. Looking at her father more closely, she notices his skin has improved too, and only then realizes she wants to try this technique for herself. She asks her father for permission, hoping to also clean her bone marrow. He tells the girl to lie on her stomach while he gets dressed and comes to help her. A few minutes later, the girl lies on the couch as Lin fetches the needles for using this technique, promising he'll save her mom and she won't have to worry anymore. He holds the needle to the little girl's back, announcing the start of the procedure. As he performs the procedure, he hears a knock at the door, which distracts him from needle pricking his daughter. The guests turn out to be Miss Bai, who brought a message from Yin-er, asking Lin Fen not to take any action or get into a confrontation with the Lin family. Then came the cries of Guo, on which Miss Bai immediately reacts and runs to her, thinking Lin had beaten the little girl. After entering the room, she finds the little girl lying on the couch with needles in her back, and realizes that Guo is cleansing her bone marrow, which surprises the girl, who didn't expect such knowledge from the woman. Miss Bai had already seen this practice, so she recognized it. Lin asks Miss Bai if she knows Bai Ci, but she's surprised to learn he's been cut off from her uncle's family. The man is shocked because he thought Bai Ci was the head of the Bai household. Bai Ci was banished from the house for slandering the Bai family, and now he's completely disconnected from them. Lin Feng shows Miss Bai the pharmacopoeia, which delights the woman. She's furious at Bai for stealing the family heirloom and daring to sell it. After inspecting its contents, the woman finds only 3 needles instead of 9, and Lin guesses Bai might have hidden the other 6. Lin decides to ask Miss Bai if she knows how to strike the other 6, but she says only her grandfather might know that. Hearing that, Lin asks to meet the Bai family's grandfather, hoping to heal her old wound. 2 days later, while Lin was at the 99-year celebration of the Bai family's master at their house, little Guo was bored at school. She angrily scribbled her assignments, frustrated with her time at school. But since her father promised to save Yin the girl agreed to go to school and sit through boring lessons. She aggressively started writing something in her notebook, furious at the injustice done to her. Ms. Tan walked into the class and mistook Guo's aggressive writing for hard work, which made her happy. Then the woman told the girl that her father had gone to Jindu with Ms. Bai, and the little girl would stay with her until he returned. Guo wasn't thrilled because she expected Ms. Tan to keep a close eye on her, but the girl was too young to live alone. In the end, Ms. Tan dragged the grumpy Guo home to pack her things. They arrived home, talking about what the girl should take with her. But then the little girl found something dangerous and stopped Ms. Tan at the door. She scowled and ordered the stranger to leave, standing frozen in place waiting for him to go. A stranger emerged from around the corner, searching for the girl's father, wanting to know where he was. The girl calmly asks the man who he is, but he refuses to answer until he finds out where Lin Feng is. Guo replies that he ran off with another woman, leaving her alone. Not believing the girl's words, he menacingly pulls out his knife. And with a swift motion, he charges toward little Guo with his knife raised. Little kid pushes Miss Tan aside to protect her, ready to take the hit from the stranger. She quickly bends away from the knife strike, not letting the man land a hit. Then she firmly and unexpectedly grabs his hand, which is holding the knife. The girl breaks his arm, and with the crack of bones, the knife falls from her. The girl pulls the man by the arm, which gets her closer to him and opens up a chance to strike. She suddenly throws him, causing the stranger to lose his balance. The girl lands a brutal kick to the man's chest, forcing him to cough up blood, only to realize he's been seriously hurt. The man crashes into the wall with a loud crash, making Guo worry about the expensive wall's condition. She runs to the terrified man, who already has 3 broken ribs from one hit, and demands he pay for any damage in the house. Grabbing the scoundrel by the collar, she interrogates him about who he is, what he's doing here, and why he's after her dad, but he lies, claiming he's her uncle come to return Lin Fan's money. The girl gets visibly angry at his answer, clearly not buying his story at all. Guo starts beating the man up until he tells her the truth, because she doesn't believe her greedy dad would lend anyone money. The man finally gives up and tells them that the Lin family promises a huge reward for our heroes, but then the little girl asks Miss Tan to call the police and get rid of this scum. Meanwhile in Jindu, Lin Feng and Miss Bai were preparing for the Bai family's festival, having prepared a gift that would definitely please her grandfather. Miss Bai prepared a jade scepter so our hero could give to his grandfather, only to ask for 1.8 million in return, which really upset our hero. Then the women advise our hero to win his grandfather's favor so he can ask him for the other 6 needles. Sitting at the head of the festival was an old man. Even though his family wasn't in the top 5 of Jindu, he had a lot of social influence and many tried to please him. Following Miss Bai, Lin examined the old man and realized his martial arts skills were extremely strong, so our hero wouldn't be able to beat him if a fight broke out. The guests at the party started whispering about Miss Bai's appearance, but only to realize that Lin Feng walking beside her was her alimony-seeking boyfriend. Listening to the gossip about her, Bai Zhou held back her anger, but her face betrayed her frustration and resentment. Grandpa also overheard the conversations, and before realizing that his granddaughter was being judged, he ordered everyone to shut up and stop criticizing his daughter. After greeting his granddaughter, he smiled at her warmly, asking about her life far from the family. Bai Zhou proudly told him she was already a police captain and was doing well on her own. He was happy for his granddaughter and proudly announced that the Bai family finally had a worthy heir. The woman introduced the hero's grandfather to the family, ignoring the others' teasing. Lin Feng bowed to the grandfather, handing over the jade scepter, but one family member kept mocking him, calling the gift cheap and an insult. Miss Bai tried to shut the joker up, but he kept taunting and provoking, refusing to stop. After receiving the gift, Lin pulled out a bamboo scroll with the Shen Nun pharmacopoeia, wanting to return it to its rightful owner. The shocked head of the Bai family was amazed to learn where Lin got the Shen Nun pharmacopoeia, which has been passed down in their family for generations. His grandson, still not stopping his insults, accused Lin of stealing it and now trying to return it, but this time the hero stood his ground and snapped back at him. But just when everyone's having fun, Bai Ci shows up out of nowhere, demanding to speak to Lin Feng. The man starts getting angry, insisting he protected the pharmacopoeia and that Lin stole it with lies. But Bai Zhou stands up for Lin, asking for proof that he really stole it, not believing the exiled Bai Ci. Her attitude really ticks off Bai, who gets so angry he demands more respect from her. Then Bai Zhou tells her grandfather that Lin Feng didn't steal the pharmacopoeia, but bought it from Bai, who's actually to blame for its disappearance. The furious grandfather wants an explanation from Bai Ci, who only nervously tries to justify himself. Bai asks for proof so he can show he's telling the truth, but then agrees to provide it. It turns out Lin Yu was hired by the Bai family to get rid of Lin Feng, which means the whole thing was a setup. Lin Feng crosses his arms calmly, waiting patiently for Bei Si to produce the evidence he promised. Of course, Bei Si had no proof ready, so he just asked Lin to show a receipt for the pharmacy purchase. Lin Feng denies the receipt exists, explaining the deal is considered paid once the goods are received and reminds there were witnesses at the auction. But flustered Bei accuses our hero of slander and can't come up with anything else to prove his point. The family head kicks Bei Si out, furious at his arrogance and lies, only to realize he was right about everything. He then turns to Lin Fan and asks for forgiveness, which only makes his grandson angry, who had been teasing our hero all along. Lin accuses the Bei family heirs of being at rock bottom because of their stupid behavior, not knowing they were already gone. The guy goes wild, loses his temper and charges at the man with his fists raised, but then gets stopped mid-attack. Lin Fan catches his punch, grips his hand tight and stops him from landing a hit, only to crush his fingers in the process. He squeezes so hard it leaves him unable to move, which is when the real fight begins. The guy cried out in pain, calling for his grandfather's help, but the old man, ashamed of his grandson, asked them to take him away. Apologizing to the guests, the head of the Bai family invited everyone to the lunchroom. Bai Zhou led all the guests to the lunchroom, calling Lin Fan to follow along. But then they stopped as someone slapped Lin Fan on the shoulder. Old man Bai decided to thank Lin Fan for returning their family heirloom. He also realized the hero had come here not just to return it, so Lin Fan began teaching the Bai head acupunctural techniques from Shen Nguyen. The request surprised the old man a bit, but it also intrigued him because only Bai and people from there know how to perform this technique. In exchange for the training, Lin Feng brought the old man a gift. The gift was a longevity pill, and the old man immediately realized that Lin Feng was the one who had given 3 longevity pills to the masters of Huado. He also heard that he had traded them for the family of the Golden Lotus, and then hinted that learning the Shen Nguyen technique cost such a price. Then he asked Lin if he was married, since the old man wanted to bring someone like our hero into his family, but Lin was already married and had a 6-year-old daughter. The cunning old man replied that the technique is only passed down to the male heir of the Bai family, so Lin Feng could have married Zhou, which surprised the guys. Lin realizes things aren't as simple, so he offers the chief 100 longevity pills. The old man doubts our hero could carry hundreds of pills, so he agrees to the deal, but then Lin asks Miss Bai to bring him his backpack. A few minutes later, the woman brings our hero his backpack. Opening it, Lin pours out a pile of pills onto the table, which leaves the old man in awe. Convinced by Lin Fan's sincerity, the old man promises to share all the records on Shen Nguyen technique, amazed by the pill's quality. Half an hour later, our heroes sat in the chief's office, which is when he announced the treasure was returning to its true owner. Lin Fan is surprised by what he hears, because the technique had never been his to truly own. These records contained an understanding of the old man on how to perform the first 9 stabs. Lin asks the old man where the second part of this pharmacopoeia might be, not knowing that it's already in his hands. Mr. Bai only replies that our hero already knows about it, since he's from some mysterious place. But it seems the old man didn't quite get why our hero was so interested in this. Lin just awkwardly smiles, and the grandfather asks him to leave this conversation between them. The old man suggests our hero stay with him for a few days so he can help him out, only to offer a drink afterward. By 10 at night, drunken shouts from the Beeve house echoed as his granddaughter tried to convince the old man to stop drinking. In the end, the drunk old man was taken to bed by the servant staff, while our hero, drunk and happy, finally got the technique, even if only half of it. Bai Zhou took the drunk Lin to his room, while he kept thanking her and offering a free massage in return. The woman blushed and told him to be quiet, but he didn't stop trying to convince her to get well and have the massage. She threw Lin onto the bed and decided to explain why she was refusing, but nervously stopped herself. She was actually scared that the drunk man wouldn't be able to hold back and would start harassing her. Lin headed to the shower to sober up and then returned to give Miss Bai a massage. While he was in the shower, the woman awkwardly sat on the bed, blushing and feeling embarrassed. Our hero quickly returned from the shower, wearing just a robe, energetic and in a good mood, and asked Bai Zhou to undress. Meanwhile, as Lin gave the woman a massage, Bai's grandfather approached the door of the room. He barged in without knocking to ask Lin Fan a question. He walked into the room to find our hero giving his granddaughter a chest massage, but it didn't even fluster him. He apologized and asked them to keep going, then quickly shut the door behind him. Lin rushed to stop him and explained that the old man had completely misunderstood everything. A while later, Lin was sitting with Mr. Bai having tea and discussing the previous misunderstanding. The man tried to explain that there was nothing between him and Miss Bai. She was just as usual having therapy sessions with him. But the old man didn't believe him, thinking it was all just an excuse not to marry Zhou, furious that, according to Lin, they had been alone together for the first time already. Lin Feng reminded the old man he's married and has a 6-year-old daughter, but the old man just suggested he divorce and leave the kid with his wife. Our hero didn't like the idea, but the old man kept blaming him for trying to trick his granddaughter. Mr. Bai harshly laid out his options for resolving the situation, first suggesting Lin Feng marry his granddaughter, join the family, change his surname, or return all the tech materials. Lin Feng didn't like how the old man was pushing him, so he asked if there were other options. Smirking suspiciously, the old man answered our hero's question in the affirmative. Just then a vase flew across the room, shattering with a loud crash. After that, armed men burst into the room surrounding Lin Feng, but the old man set up a trap to force him to marry Bai Zhou by force. At the old man's command, the bandits charged at our hero, who had just managed to arm himself with silver needles. In seconds, Lin took care of them, only to realize she needed to ask Mr. Bai what this whole thing was about. As he ran for his life, our hero one last time tried to convince the old man that there was nothing between him and Bai Zhou. Then the old man hit the table, forbidding Lin from leaving his house without his permission. Lin Feng replied that he wanted to settle everything peacefully without fights or battles. Bai Zhou walks into the room, horrified by the mess her grandfather has made. She tries to convince the old man to let our hero go, but he won't listen to her pleas. Zhou steps closer to her grandfather, whispering something in his ear. Ignoring her, he sets his conditions for Lin, that he can leave if he survives 3 slaps from the old man's palm. Lin has no choice but to agree to the unyielding old man Bai's demand. The old man charges forward, his outstretched palm moving at high speed toward Lin. He pushes Lin Feng aside with the first strike, but he's already managed to stay on his feet. Bai then delivers the second blow, realizing Lin has basic kung fu skills. He uses his internal energy to land a stronger hit. From the powerful strike, Lin coughs up blood, panicking over his own life. He wonders what could have so suddenly changed the old man's attitude toward him, and why he's receiving such merciless blows. Bai Zhou tried to stop her grandfather, but Bai Ci appeared behind her. He covered the woman's mouth with his hand, stopping her from ruining his plan. Lin Fei barely stayed on his feet, giving himself an acupuncture session to recover a little bit. He lifted his gaze to the old man, grinning boldly and waiting for the final strike. The old man noticed how Lin activated his body's potential energy through acupuncture and frowned. This didn't stop Bai, and he noticeably tensed up before delivering the third strike. He gathered all his strength into his palm, and with a sharp motion he struck Lin Fei. After the powerful blow, Lin Fei was pushed back again, and blood trickled from his mouth. He stayed on his feet, kept his wits about him, which surprised the old man who had expected to beat our hero. He froze in place, staring at Lin Fan in disbelief. The beaten hero prepared to leave, since the old man had promised 3 strikes and then to let him go. Bai kept his word and let Lin go, expecting him to hurt him worse since that's what Lin was supposed to do. Bai Ci wanted his father to deal with Lin Fan, since Lin was ordered to do so to make the Bai family truly aristocratic, or else their family would be ruined. The old man wanted to marry Lin to his granddaughter to bring him into their family, but he had no other choice but to fight him, only to be surprised when our hero stood his ground. He asked Lin Fan not to involve any other family members, and our hero wasn't planning on doing that either. After that, Lin rushed out of the place as fast as he could. But unhappy Bai Ci didn't want to let Lin Fan go, to which his father replied that he had let the man go since he had given his word, but what would happen to him outside was no longer his concern. So the sneaky Bai decided to deal with our hero outside the house. Bai Zhou was very disappointed in her grandfather, who justified himself by saying he had done it for their family. On the street, Lin Fan met a crowd of armed men led by Bai Ci. Our hero's old injury starts to take its toll and he noticeably weakens. Bai Ci orders the mob to attack Lin. They break away from the group and rush to strike him. Our hero prepares, and in the blink of an eye he hurls a swarm of sharp needles at the crowd. The needles pierce the attackers and they collapse to the side, losing consciousness and the ability to continue the fight. Furious Bai commands the remaining gang members to grab Lin Feng. While our hero, wounded, fights off the attackers, Bai keeps sending armed men after him. Lin Feng decides to take a longevity pill because he's used up too much energy trying to fend off the group of men. But then he suddenly feels some quick movement behind him. He turns around sharply to figure out what's going on. It turns out to be Miss Bai standing in front of him, offering to take her as a hostage so Bai Ci can get his men to release him. He freezes, remembering how Wei Wei did the same 6 years ago. With no other choice, he agrees to use Bai Zhou as the hostage. He pressed the needle to the woman's neck and screamed for them to let him go, but Bai Ci ordered him to ignore the pleas. But then an old man named Bai walked in demanding Lin release his granddaughter and leave. But our hero wasn't in a hurry to let her go, since he wasn't sure if someone wouldn't attack him. He demanded they hand him a car or else he'd kill Bai Zhou, continuing to press the sharp needle against her throat. The old man saw that Lin had slightly injured his granddaughter, so he panicked over the last hope of the Bai family and ordered them to quickly give the man a car. A few minutes later, the Bai men brought the car. Watching as the old man released our hero, Bai Ci expressed his displeasure, but the old man told him to shut up. Lin put Miss Bai in the front seat of the car. He jumped into the car behind the woman, climbed over her and took the wheel. When the car started moving, Bai realized it was a setup, and the old man told him to follow them, worried about his beloved granddaughter's life. After leaving the Beeve house, Lin asked Joe to take the wheel instead of him. The woman got worried about Lin's poor condition, but he reassured her everything was fine and asked if she knew why they wanted Lin dead. Bai Ci told her they wanted to take care of our hero because he took in and humiliated their whole family. But according to Lin Fan, they just needed longevity pills since they spent too much on rare ones, and our hero knows how to make them. A crowd of gangsters blocked their path, and Lin ordered Joe to drive through them and not stop. Seeing the car heading straight for them, the men panicked and scattered to the sides. The gang's leader, Mr. Zia, told his subordinates to block the hero's way. Following their master's orders, they immediately started throwing road cones at the car. Excited and nervous, Lin and Joe felt something hit the front wheels of the car. The wheels screeched and smoked, and that's when the car finally stopped. Mr. Zai, confidently smiling, approached the car, noting the hopelessness of our heroes. Our hero recognized him and reminded the scum how he had botched their first meeting, not at all scared of his gangsters. Annoyed by Lin Fan's boldness, he ordered his men to drag Lin out of the car and beat him up. But then out of nowhere, Guo landed on the car, determined to fight back against the bandits who had attacked her father. Seeing his daughter, who should have been home, our hero was greatly surprised, but the girl couldn't sit at home and came to save him. Leaving the conversation, she jumped from the car and kicked Mr. Zai, wanting to defend her father. He gets thrown back by the strong hit, landing right in the middle of the crowd. Zhe commands his subordinates to kill the little girl Guo, but then gets surprised by her innocence. Guo puts on an innocent face and asks the villain how dare he attack a helpless child. Zhe coughs up blood after being hit by Guo, not realizing how brave she really is. One of his men refuses to attack the defenseless child, thinking it's not right for adults to act like that. Zhe gets angry at his answer, insisting that this isn't an ordinary kid, capable of beating an adult man. Guo happily taunted the grown men while chewing a candy, then launched a dozen sharp needles their way. The girl took down the whole group of scum without breaking a sweat, still casually licking her candy. After finishing off the gangsters, she went to her father's car and asked him to take her to her aunt's. The girl confidently slid into the back seat, slamming the door shut behind her. Lin checked the rearview mirror and saw another crowd of men approaching fast. He nervously ordered Bai Zhou to reverse, trying to get past them before they caught up. The little girl asked them to stop, but she claimed they were her allies. Lin Feng was even more surprised, not knowing who these people were or why he should help them. Later, our heroes were sitting at the Van family's house, which turned out to be the same crowd that had been following them, brought by the girl. While pouring some mixture into the barrel where Lin was sitting, Guo explained that Mr. Wan had heard about Lin's search for his father and had brought her there by helicopter. Then she poured a bucket of water in there, hoping it would help Lin Feng. He then told his daughter he knew 9 Shen Nuan techniques from Bei, which thrilled the little girl. Little girl notices how badly the old man hurt her father and wonders how he's going to get revenge. But Lin doesn't plan to exact revenge on the old man since it was Bai Ci who provoked him, leaving Guo upset and angry. She turned around and left, telling her father she was going to bed, clearly intending to get back at Bai Ci despite her father not wanting it. The next day, Bai Ci was peacefully resting in his manor, but then he suddenly heard a loud crash. The source of the crash was Guo, who had broken down the gates demanding to see the old man and his son. Bai Ci, furious over the little girl's arrogant behavior, shouted at her. He approached the girl, leading his guards with him, but she just called him a fatso again and wanted to figure out why her father was beaten. He couldn't take the insults anymore, so he ordered his men to attack the kid and stop her. Not hearing an explanation for why Lin Fan was beaten, she ran straight toward the bully. Guo kicked Bei in the stomach, sending him flying and knocking him off his feet. The man spits out a mouthful of blood, experiencing the kid's anger firsthand. Then the girl hits him on the leg, making him sit down hard on his knees in front of her. She kicks him in the knee, pressing down with a loud crack. The fat man screams in pain, but the surrounding guards dare not approach the girl. He hears the screams and approaches, old Bai wanting to find out what's happening and who she is to be messing with their family. She glares up at the old man and demands to know about the attack on her father. Bai realizes she's the daughter of Lin Fan and warns that even her father couldn't overcome him, so fighting him is pointless for her. The girl admits she can't beat the old man, but then kicks helpless Bai Ci in the knee again, smirking cruelly as she enjoys her revenge. Old man yells at the guards to deal with the little girl, but he realizes he's already ruined his relationship with the Lin family and there's no going back. Unexpectedly, the girl bolts from the scene and runs away from the Bei family estate. She decides to leave their home as fast as she can, not knowing that the old man was clearly a master of combat and would beat her. Picking up speed, the little girl darts out of the manor's threshold just as the guards arrive. Turning to face them, Guo pretends to be amused, mocking and condemning the adult men for daring to touch a child. She bolts away from them, leaving behind a beaten Bei Ci and his furious father. After some time, she climbed onto the gates of the Cia family estate to remove the gilded plaque with their family name. The gates creaked open and a surprised servant peeked out, watching the girl's actions. After seeing the thief on the cameras, the man came out and realized it was little Guo, then started yelling at her. She innocently laughed and asked if this was currently Cia Hu's house. The man shouted at the girl, but then got a solid punch to the chest. Knocking the man down, the little girl started demanding they bring her Cia Hu. Jehu approached the girl surrounded by guards, but she revealed she had brought him a gift to give personally. Scared of the girl, he asked for his brother to come and help. The girl smiled sweetly but suspiciously, telling him not to worry. Seconds later, dozens of thin needles shot out of her hands. The needles flew toward Jehu and his guards, knocking them all off their feet instantly. Gugu sat next to the scared guy, then pulled out a long thin needle she had prepared especially for him. Jehu peed his pants out of fear from the girl's actions, causing the little girl to laugh and tease him. But then someone's hand appeared above the girl's head, quickly pressing down on her. Feeling this, the girl leaped away from her spot, startled. The stranger turned out to be Zhichenjin, Jehu's brother, who had been watching silently. The little girl landed softly on the ground, scolding the boys for blaming her for cruelty when they were the ones who first started harassing her family. Jehu, scared and in tears, grabbed his brother's leg, begging to catch the girl so he could get the longevity pill formula. This guy was strong enough to take down our Guo, but he wasn't easy to fool. He shoved his brother aside and rushed toward the girl, throwing a punch. A phone call suddenly rang out. The girl picked it up, calmly stopping the fight with Chen Tin. The caller was annoyed Lin Feng, who told the girl to hurry back and not get into any trouble until she was caught. Chen Tin approached the girl, demanding the phone so he could talk to Lin. The girl agreed and looked at him with a suspiciously clever glance. Guo threw something at him in that same second, and he instantly caught the object the little girl had thrown. He looked at his palm and found a smooth stone, running his fingers over it with confusion. While the man stared in surprise at the stone in his hand, the girl quickly made her way out of the manor. He clenched his fist in anger and smashed the stone, shouting at the guards to stop the little girl. A crowd of men chased the running girl through the narrow city streets. Escaping from the gangsters, Guo darted around the corner quickly. The girl rounded the corner and spotted an open door, so she darted inside without hesitation. The villains lost sight of the girl, who was hiding inside the building at that moment. They ran ahead, but the little girl giggled and mocked the tricked-up gangsters. 3 old men appeared behind the girl, praising her skeleton, which was perfect for studying traditional medicine. They recognized her as Lin Fan's daughter and were delighted to meet her. One of the old men said he'd been searching for a successor for years and offered the talented little girl to be his apprentice, but she didn't believe him. He took the girl by the hands and assured her of his seriousness, only to realize she was the perfect student he'd been searching for. But then another old man accused his colleague of unfairness, because he was the first to say he wanted to take the girl as an apprentice, hoping in that way to get the longevity pills. In the end, all 3 started arguing over who would get Guo as their apprentice, and the girl wanted to share her own opinion. They kept arguing and pressuring the girl to decide who she would choose as her teacher. At the same time, in the Van family conference room, Mr. Wan was furious and told Lin that he wouldn't let them harm Lin Fan. But confident Lin Tiancheng told him not to interfere, wanting to discuss Lin Fan's wedding with Yin Er. Old man realized the man wanted to trick and kill Lin by the same method he used on some guy. That guy was our hero, who 6 years ago was tricked by Lin just like this. Lin threatened Mr. Wan, who shot back, refusing to be treated that way in his own home. Lin Feng spoke up, saying he and Yin Er are just friends, so there's no need to discuss the engagement. Tian Zheng kept insulting, calling our hero a coward, realizing he'd met Lin before. According to Lin, the Lin family is willing to sacrifice their heir's reputation just for the recipe. Then Tian Zheng offered him 2 choices. He could have chosen to go to the lines or voluntarily hand over the recipe, but only to realize that the real choice was already made. Lin Feng is slightly nervous, but hides it and simply agrees to hand over the recipe without a fight. Just then, little Guo walks into the hall and refuses to give up their formula, which is when Tian Chen goes completely berserk. The little girl, as usual, responds with contempt, showing the man that she couldn't care less about him. Lin goes off the rails, accusing Mr. Wan of manipulating the child, not knowing that the child is already in control. At that moment, Guo screams that she's being targeted, calling for the masters to come to her aid. 3 masters walk in carrying dozens of candies, ready to fight anyone who dared hurt their student. The girl hid behind them and told Tianchen Chen, who, according to her, threatened to beat her. Lin Feng looked at the girl and the masters, confused about when she had become their student. She met his gaze and silently promised to tell him later. One of the masters approached Tianchen to find out why he was threatening their apprentice. The man panicked and pretended there was a misunderstanding. But the girl kept insisting the man had threatened her and asked the master to beat the rude guy. Old man listened to the girl and beat up everyone in Lin's house, then kicked them out of the manor. Boy's father thanked the helpers. Old man patted Lin on the shoulder, but then told him to pay Guo several thousand for her pocket money. Lin got slightly annoyed and shot his daughter a look, only to realize she was acting suspiciously calm. Old man, satisfied with the outcome, approached the girl and told her she could run the whole city with their support, which thrilled her. Without thinking much, she wanted to go to Lin's family to save her mom, but her father didn't like the idea. He tried to stop the girl, but she immediately started crying and accused him of being cruel. Lin stepped in to defend her, but Lion just said he was worried about her safety. The master then convinced him that Guo would be fine as long as they stayed close. Lion bowed respectfully to him, trusting the old man's words, only to realize the girl had one strong support from the masters. Sometime later, the master and the little girl visited the Lin family's home, demanding they bring Guo's mother. They kept pushing for her release while calm Guo waited for her meeting with her. Tian Zheng greeted them politely, saying if she wanted to see her mom she should go to the police station, and the girl said her mother was Lin Yin-er. The man was surprised, but he said it was impossible. The little girl got angry at the answer, but she stood her ground. One of the masters stepped in for the little girl, demanding they call in Master Lin's family if they wouldn't let Guo see his mom. Tian agreed to bring Yin-er since the master was in seclusion. 5 minutes later, he brought Yin-er to the little girl, who ran happily toward her, calling her mom. But the woman pushed Guo away, claiming she couldn't have kids because she wasn't even married. The little girl's eyes well up with tears, refusing to believe Yin-er's words, only to realize she might have lost her memory. The woman simply turned away from the girl, not accepting her as her daughter. Guo kept trying to bring back her mom, thinking she might be in danger, but she just waved it off. Yin-er left, saying she couldn't possibly have such an adult daughter and didn't have time for that. The worried masters started calming the sad girl down, promising to do whatever she wanted. As she left the manor, one master offered her as many moms as she needed, while another gave her a unique copy of the medical records, just so she wouldn't cry. The girl took the rare copy and promised not to give it away to anyone, even if someone threatened to kill her, but the master said he had plenty more like that, so it wasn't worth risking everything for. This confused the girl because she was told it was a unique copy. In response to the master's comfort, Guo said she had just been pretending in front of Linny, and that everything was actually fine with her. The old men looked slightly disappointed at the girl, saying nothing in reply. In the end, the master offered the girl to go back and study medicine since they had decided all her business was settled, but she managed to wiggle out by saying she had to go to school. The old man told her that Lin had written to him, saying the girl should return to Qinghai to go back to school since her homeroom teacher was looking for her. Guo was back home the next day begging Lin to give her a few days off, but the little girl couldn't afford to miss school anymore. Approaching the house, our heroes noticed the door was open, which it definitely had been closed when they left. Worried about their belongings, they rushed inside to check if everything was still in place. The girl screamed loudly, alerting her father, who was already heading toward her. Walking into the house, he found the little girl sitting on the floor surrounded by boxes and other junk. It turned out the girl had found her restaurant discount coupons torn and ruined, sobbing over them. Lin yelled at her for the unnecessary coupons, telling her to check if the money was still in the room while he checked the kitchen. The kids searched the whole house and eventually found the hidden money. Then, lying on the couch, Lin Fei realized it was Lin who had come for the pill formula. He asked Guo about the meeting with Yin-er, and she told him that the woman pretended not to know her and said nothing else. Lin praised the woman's act as if she hadn't done it, and the little girl could have gotten into a big trouble. Again upset, the girl blamed her hated Lins for taking her mom away. The father decided to cheer up Guo, promising that one day their whole family would reunite, then after a pause, ordered the little girl to clean the house. The girl was unhappy with his assignment, so she demanded the police be called, but Lin said it would be useless since there were no clues left behind by Lin. To get the girl to clean the house, he offered her 100 yuan and a trip to a nice restaurant. After accepting his offer, the little girl slapped Lin on the hand to signal the deal was done. Sometime later, the tired girl with her father walked out of the house heading to the restaurant, just as he promised. As they crossed the street, a fancy car appeared, speeding toward them from the opposite direction. But luckily the guys managed to stop in time, and the car zoomed past them without incident. Guo shouted at the driver for speeding down a quiet city street, only to realize the car was about to reverse toward them. The car started backing up toward the heroes, scaring the girl who grabbed her father's hand, but he told her to handle it herself. A window rolled down, revealing Guo's classmate, who recognized her and called her a barking dog. Then a young woman stepped out, apologizing for her daughter's rude behavior, which was when the girl finally got out. The woman, Han Lan, is the sister of Fei, the rude classmate who had insulted Guo. She met our hero and they shook hands with mutual respect, only for Han Lan to later apologize for her sister's actions. Lin subtly checks Han Lan's pulse during their handshake, only to realize it's dangerously fast. He tells the woman she looks pale and fragile, but then points out her pulse is way too quick and that's not normal. Han is surprised and assumes Lin Feng is a doctor, but he just modestly says he knows a little about medicine. Just then the girl gets a call, and before leaving she gives her new acquaintance her phone number and asks to call later. After that incident, our heroes finally make it to the restaurant and hungrily devour their food, shocking the staff with their greed. Full from eating, the girl complains about why they're eating in a regular diner instead of a fancy restaurant. The girl notices Lin's phone rings, letting him know about the emergency. The man answers and hears a child's voice begging him to come help his sister, then gives the address. He's surprised to learn the girl has his number, but she says she got it from the farm management office. When asked why the kid didn't call an ambulance, she says only Lin can save his sister's life, so he bolts out, taking Guo with him. After some time, they arrive at Han Lan's house, where her younger sister meets them. The girl leads them to the bedroom, where Han Lan lies unconscious, shocking Lin to see her illness was already present during the day, but a seizure hit her by night. The guys checked the sick girl out, only to find she was poisoned by the venom of the goose snake. Han Lan had all the signs of poisoning. Her breast was burning, her chest was full of gas, and her tongue was drooping, and if she wasn't treated, she could die in a year. The girls were lucky to meet our hero, because a normal doctor wouldn't have been able to handle it, and with a needle in hand, he was about to bring her back to consciousness. He carefully inserted the sharp needle between Han Lan's eyebrows. In an instant, the girl opened her eyes, which looked weak and tired from our perspective. Noticing Lin Fan, she asked him what was wrong, and her little sister, crying, answered that she could die from the goose snake's venom. She got scared hearing this, not knowing where he could have appeared from inside her. He just looked at her suspiciously, telling her she should know where he came from. Han Laney coughs and black liquid pours from her mouth, shocking her younger sister and making her start to cry. The girl panicked, begging Lin to help her, saying she'd pay him 2 million for it. Hearing about the money with a serious and brave face, he assured her he'd save her and remove the poison from her body. He was about to write out a recipe and send Guo to buy herbs and bandages. Our heroes walked into the girl's room with medicine, while her sister panicked and pushed them along. Lin Feng ordered Guo to hold the girl's shoulders and Fei Fei to grab her legs. He lifted the girl's sweater, bringing her the freshly prepared medicine. Since the goose snake is inside Han Laney's stomach and our hero can't pull it out directly, he'll extract it with herbs. He pressed harder on the girl's stomach with the herbs, trying to heal her faster. The girl screamed in pain. Lin sent his daughter to fetch the decoction, asking the girl not to move. Her face turned pale and she was sweating, weakly asking where Lin planned to pull the snake from. He calmly replied that the snake would come out of her backside, which left the girl horrified. At 10 o'clock in the evening, Guo brought the ready-made decoction to give to Han Laney. As the girl drank the decoction, Lin Feng told her to go to the bathroom and when the snake came out, put it in a box, never flushing it down the toilet. After trying the decoction, the girl choked and spat it back out. Lin asked her not to waste the expensive herbs that were supposed to completely kill the snake, so it wouldn't crawl into someone else. Haney Lan was sitting in the bathroom, while the others hurried her to get the snake out finally. She managed to do it, and as she exited with a box in her hands, Guo asked calmly about the snake's cleanliness. Haney Lan wrapped the girl, telling her the snake was clean and had come out on its own, then shook hands to pass the box to Lin Fen. Before she could hand it over, the girl dropped it, the box lid opened, and the snake inside slipped out. Lin reacted instantly, grabbing the box to catch the snake as it fell down. Just then, the snake unexpectedly latched onto his wrist. He was busy catching one snake when another wrapped around his hand, only to realize it was a twin snake. He pulled the snake off his hand, leaving a big hole in his wrist. Our hero suddenly felt terrible, and the little girl Guo noticed his weak state. He looked up at Han Lan and apologized, saying he was inattentive and didn't notice that one snake hit another. The girl nervously called an ambulance, explaining she didn't notice it either. Lin had a suspicion and was surprised she called for help for him instead of herself, but when Lin got poisoned, the girl rushed to call an ambulance. He told Guo to go home, but she had to first pull a snake out of herself before dealing with Han Lan and figuring out who she's serving. Back at home, he sat on the couch and asked his daughter to stick needles in his hand to seal the spots. She quickly drove gold needles into his hand, so the snake wouldn't have a chance to crawl any deeper. He used a separate needle to scrape an opening through which the snake had already crawled into his body. Then he slapped his hand, forcing the snake to fly out of the wound. The snake fell to the floor, and Guo immediately stepped on it with her foot. She crushed the snake and asked her father how he was feeling, but he said he needed to detox his body, and the girl had to wash the floor and the sole of the shoe she used to crush the snake. Lil decided to use Shen Nuan acupuncture, which can cure any illness and neutralize all types of poison. Flipping through the pharmacopoeia, he found the specific acupuncture technique he needed. The next day, our hero was sitting in his room worrying about him when Gyuo came in to check on him. Lena was in a lot of pain, both physically and psychologically, because he hadn't eaten anything since the day before. Figuring out that her father wasn't feeling well and hadn't eaten, the little girl brought him breakfast, handing over food bags and smiling widely at the man. Lin asked Gyuo about the Han family for breakfast, but the little girl knew nothing about them, not knowing that Han Lan's younger sister Fei Fei hated her. The man tried to figure out why the Han family was poisoning him, since they didn't seem to be enemies, but Gyuo was surprised, not thinking they could have done it on purpose. He then assumed it was the Lin family's plan, but somehow they were acting so far removed from the truth. Someone knocked on the door, probably someone wanting to check on Lin after yesterday's snake poisoning incident. He discussed his plan with Gyuo, asking the girl to talk to the guest while he pretended to be in a coma, so they could see what happened next. The girl listened to his plan and agreed, promising she'd do everything right. She opens the door to find Han Lan waiting on the threshold, who came to thank the girl's father and learn how Gyuo replied that he still hadn't woken up. The girl asked why the little one had called an ambulance, but she complained that she didn't have the money. Han Lan was surprised and looked at the girl questioningly. She studied her face and noticed bits of food and crumbs around Gyuo's mouth. The girl quickly wiped her mouth with her jacket sleeve. She made the most pitiful and complaining face, explaining that she had spent her last 10 yuan on food. Han Lan heard the girl's story and was about to call the doctor, but only to realize she didn't know the card's code. The kid asked for money to call a doctor, but the woman said she wanted to check his condition first. She climbed into his room and saw the man unconscious, sensing the ramen smell that made her uneasy. After that, Han Lan said she had things to do and headed for the door, but the girl cried and begged for money to call a doctor. She gave Gyuo a couple of bills and left, promising to visit them soon, but didn't know the money was only 500 yuan. The girl looked at the money the girl gave her, only to find out she'd been given just 500 yuan. Lena went down to his daughter asking how it went, but she showed him the money and offered to split it up. He didn't take the girl's offer seriously and said he'd take 300 yuan, leaving her 200. Then the doorbell rang again and Gyuo went to answer it. But before opening the door, the girl peeked through the peephole, telling her father that Lanny had fallen for their trick. She slightly opened the door, ready for any outcome. And then a whole crowd of bodyguards rushed into the house, nearly knocking the girl off her feet. Mr. Tan rolled up in a wheelchair with the guards, but then a stranger followed him inside. The girl glared at the familiar bully, blaming him for trying to harm her father. He told her father was poisoned and would die without an antidote, so the little girl had to obey every order to get it. Lin Feng lazily stretched on the stairs, confusing Mr. Tan, who had thought she was in a coma all this time. The stranger said all he needed was a command, and a creation inside the hero would start torturing his body. Mr. Tan demanded the man to act right away, and he began searching for his tool. He pulls out something like a child's drum on a stick, only to realize it's the source of the strange noise. The sight surprises and amuses our heroes, who didn't expect his magical instrument to look so childish. He decides to teach them, using the drum in a way that's both unexpected and chaotic. Lin freezes in place, staring blankly at the man after hearing the drum's sound. Then without warning, our hero starts dancing, swaying his hips and flapping his arms like a fool. The stranger looks confused, until Mr. Tan, wanting to tease Lin, takes the drum from him. He grinned with a wicked smile, started beating the drum, feeling immense joy from revenge. But the stranger realized something was wrong, because the poison snakes of goo wouldn't dance like this. Our hero kept dancing, moving his hips in rhythm with the drum. Little Gyuo liked it, and started encouraging her father to keep dancing, but Mr. Tan was sure this action of the poison was tormenting the man. He grinned wickedly, beating the drum, while the stranger tried to figure out what was going on. And Lin, never stopping, kept dancing, pleasing the scoundrel Tan. Another man speaks up, suspecting something's off, pulling Mr. Tan away from enjoying the show. Then Lin suddenly places her foot on Tan's knee, pressing down hard on him. The man realizes Lin Feng wasn't poisoned, trembling in pain and fear. He starts screaming and hides behind the man who gave him the drum, not knowing how it happened. Our hero carelessly replies that the poison wasn't a problem for him. A slightly shaken man turns out to have prepared something else against Lin Feng. Tan tells the man named Kan Shuifu to kill Lin Feng, who, hearing the name, arrogantly jokes about him. Lin clearly didn't appreciate the joke, pulls out a box with a threatening look. Inside the wooden box is a golden frog. Shuifu frees it, promising Lin that he won't leave alive. But then a sharp needle hits the man in the face, piercing him. The man loses consciousness and falls, dropping the box with the frog, which jumps onto the wheelchair Tan was sitting in. Watching the scene, dad and daughter just look down on the man with disdain. Mr. Tan, scared out of his wits, orders his guards to take the golden toad off him right away. But Lin interrupts him, warning that touching the golden toad is dangerous, and Tan asks why. Before answering his question, our hero throws a needle at him. And as the needle hits the golden toad, Lin explains that it can spit poison, which of course comes out of it after Lin Feng stuck the needle in it. Terrified, Mr. Tan begs for help, agreeing to do anything to save himself. Hearing that Tan will pay anything Lin and Guo want, our hero approaches the toad sitting on Tan's chair and carefully pulls out the needle. He does it and the toad spits out a strange purple liquid, probably the poison. The man cries in pain and fear in his chair, blaming Lin. Lin Feng steps back and the little girl approaches the chair, trying to take the toad and help the man. She takes the toad in a piece of cloth, calling it thin and wrinkled. Tan continues to cry, begging our hero for an antidote, but he refuses, not agreeing to it. So the man demanded to be sent to the hospital, and Lin asks for the price of help, asking for 990,000 yuan with a discount. He flings his money card at him, gives the PIN code, and lets him take all the cash. Lin catches the card, says he'll check if there's enough money, or else he'll send another golden toad after Tan. After paying Lin, he orders them to rush him to the hospital, and when he hears the guards call Can Shuifu a master, he calls him a regular charlatan. After they leave, Tan calls Lin and he scolds the little girl for not going to school, so Tan calls him back. It turns out she calls to have Lin take Guo to the hospital to cure a very important person who asks the little girl to help him. This person is a very important figure in the city, and if something happens to him, Qinghai will fall into chaos, so Lin agreed to come. Our heroes arrived at the second hospital in Xinhai, where the girl examined the sick man while Mr. Tan, his escort, kicked doctors out of the room. Guo carefully checked the patient's pulse, but the old man begged her to help this man. Lin asked him who the patient was, but the old man refused to answer the question. After examining the man, the girl realized he was poisoned, but couldn't figure out which poison or if they'd make it in time to find an antidote. The old man kept begging her to save the important stranger. She just lowered her head and said she couldn't do it. Her dad approached the kid asking why she gave up so fast, but she told him to heal the sick man himself. Then he asked her to cut the man's arm so the toad could suck out the poison, and there was no other option left. Before slicing the arm, she gave him needles to protect his heart, only to realize the toad would still need the wound. She sliced the arm with a golden needle, making a small cut, which meant the toad could finally start working. She held the toad to the man and asked Lin to help, so they could fully detoxify the guy without any mistakes. The old man got scared by what he saw and started asking excitedly what they were doing, not knowing how close they were to saving him. Guo didn't wipe the golden toad off the sick man's hand, but she said they were removing the poison, carefully watching the process. Mr. Tan panicked and rushed to stop the procedure, but Lin calmed him down since the poison was unusual and required an unusual treatment. The little girl noticed the sick man's skin and blood had changed color, and Lin told her to remove the toad so they wouldn't turn the man into a mummy. The old man kept shaking with fear, somehow thinking everything was going wrong. After finishing the process, the girl removed the toad and asked Mr. Tan to find people for a blood transfusion, otherwise the man wouldn't survive. Hearing the girl's words, he was relieved they could save the sick man. The old man immediately ordered the local doctors to prepare blood bags. When the doctors rushed into the room, the girl told them to check the patient's temperature, blood pressure, and pulse, and they immediately scrambled. The doctors found everything was normal, but the man was slightly exhausted, so they needed to feed him well to build up his strength. The old man said he had never seen such therapy before and was really worried during the whole process. After making sure the patient was fine, Lin and Guo headed out, but the old man stopped them, wanting to thank the kids for their help. The little girl was very interested in his offer and stopped to find out how Mr. Tan wanted to thank them. He clapped his hands, and the doctor entered the room holding a gleaming scroll in his hands. He presented the scroll to our heroes with an important air, asking them to accept it as a token of gratitude. He unrolled the scroll, revealing a banner that read Genius Doctor. The gift clearly didn't impress our heroes, and Guo asked to trade it for money. He asked them not to be upset, explaining that it was a banner from the hospital and served as proof of the boy's high skill. He suggested hanging it at their clinic to attract more patients, who would bring them a lot of money. The girl was inspired to open her own clinic, but then she pitched the idea to Lin Fen. In response, he asked how many classes and homework the kid had missed, which really got to Guo, but she offered to work after classes. Mr. Tan decided to support the kid, recognizing her genius in medicine and the potential to help many people. Lin wasn't very enthusiastic until those two finally agreed to open the clinic together. By the weekend, Mr. Tan was at the clinic's opening ceremony, surrounded by a crowd of people. The kid and Mr. Tan managed to open the clinic in a fairly short time because he had good connections. Dad, who had been trying to talk Guo out of opening a clinic, now begged the guards to let him in so he could get his job back for 100,000 yuan. Seeing the girl's success, he refused to back his earlier words from the hospital. The old man called Guo to cut the ribbon, and everyone around was surprised that a little girl had become a doctor. Smiling, she took the scissors in her hands, while the crowd continued to be amazed that such a young girl could be a genius doctor. She cut the red ribbon, announcing the opening of the new clinic, and everyone around cheered enthusiastically. Mr. Tan offered to take patients today, but the girl could only see them on weekends since she went to school on weekdays. He was disappointed but kept it hidden, since he'd already invited his friends for treatment and planned to send patients with strange illnesses here anytime soon. A crowd of men with gifts and well wishes approached the girl. They were Mr. Tan's friends. They kept showering the little girl with presents, promising to come to her when they got sick, and Guo was totally fine with that. She called everyone to follow her to the clinic for an exam, while ordinary people from the street watched in surprise, wondering why so many people had come to the little girl. Guo started examining and treating people, uncovering their illnesses, and the surprised crowd from the street kept watching this happen. Noticing the girl's amazing abilities, people guessed she was a master of medicine. Customers happy with the treatment started leaving the clinic, praising the girl, which created a huge buzz among the crowd. After hearing good reviews about the clinic, people all rushed to check out Guo. Seeing the crowd, someone stayed back, clearly envious of the new clinic's success. After 2 hours, people started to leave, leaving our heroes alone to celebrate the little girl's success. They sat inside counting a huge pile of money left by the crowd after the extraction. Then someone crashed into the clinic. The little girl said they'd be closed until next Saturday. But it was a group of unhappy people coming with complaints about bad treatment. Our heroes looked at them with a sour expression, thinking they were just rowdy troublemakers. They showed them their injured friend and accused the little girl of not wanting to take responsibility for the failed treatment, which left the man with nausea and diarrhea. Then someone from the crowd said that many had praised her drugs and treatment, but the scoundrels kept lying, claiming the medicines were a miracle and our heroes were frauds stealing money from people. They also started doubting that Mr. Tan, who was at the event, was really there, and that their banner was just ordered from some factory. In the end, the angry crowd, believing the clinic's enemies' stories, started demanding their money back. The girl stormed over to the men, explaining that she hadn't prescribed the laxative, so the patient's condition had nothing to do with her, but they kept accusing her anyway. Furious at the lies directed at her, Guo lunged at the liar with her fists raised. But Lin stepped in, grabbing the little girl's shoulder to stop her from lashing out. Then he turned to the man, demanding proof that they had taken their herbal remedy. And just then a chair flew over, thrown with considerable force. The scoundrels decided to destroy the whole clinic, justifying it by saying they wanted to stop our heroes from harming other people. He grabs the same box with the golden frog without realizing the danger it holds. He slams it loudly onto the floor, continuing to smash everything around him, but then he jumps back in fear, eyes wide, only to hear the frog's croak echo through the room. The frog jumps onto his foot, gripping it tightly, and only then does he realize how much worse things are getting. Then suddenly and without warning, it leaps from his foot straight up toward his face. It lands right on the rotten guy's nose, and his panicked face twists into pure terror. Our heroes watched in silence, surprised that the man had dared to provoke a golden toad. The toad jumped down and the man felt a sharp pain on his face, screaming and writhing from the unpleasant sensation. Lin told the man it was a venomous golden toad, and Guo added that regular doctors couldn't neutralize its poison. Crying on his knees, the man begged for help, forgetting that just minutes ago he'd called the boys frauds. Begging the little girl, he admitted he was wrong and shouldn't have taken advice from another clinic and slandered our heroes. Lin Feng agreed to treat him, and those who had watched the incident realized they'd wrongly accused the boys and hoped to get their thrown-out pills back. Lin gave the man the pill, but made him promise to slander the clinic that hired him so they'd get punished. Then he told him the medicine was temporary, and after the scoundrel finished the job, Lin would give him an antidote and a 1% discount on medical services. Meanwhile, the girl caught the complaint and put it back in the box. After a tough workday, Lin suggested forgetting about work and just eat. But Guo pointed out to her father that the frog was in bad shape, and looking at it, he guessed she was hungry and needed to be fed with herbs. But the golden frog refused to eat regular herbs, and the man suggested trying to feed her poison. He rummaged through the drawers filled with various ingredients for medicine, looking for something to feed the hungry frog. Unexpectedly, the frog leaped out of its box toward the drawers. She landed near the drawers, and our hero looked at her, thinking she was interested in something. Loudly croaking, the golden frog jumped into the jar of arsenic, finding something to gnaw on. The little girl was surprised that the frog could constantly eat poisonous substances. Lin was also surprised, pondering why the frog deliberately ate poisons. 20 minutes later, the toad ate all the poison in the box, only to strangely turn red. After pulling the toad out of the box, our hero decided to take it and run to the pharmacy to buy more poisonous plants, but Guo clearly feared the toad and suggested they throw it away. Lin had heard that if the golden toad starts eating poisons, it will soon evolve and be able to bite its owner, so he refused the girl, saying they should tame the toad instead. Before leaving for the pharmacy, she asked him what they should do if taming the toad didn't work, but he reassured her it would, and then he left. Walking into the pharmacy, Lin saw the saleswoman and a stranger. The saleswoman liked our Lin Feng, called him a handsome guy and asked what he needed, and he told her he was looking for poisons. He asked for a kilogram of poison of every kind, placing money on the table. The woman who sold medicine ran her hand over Lin's arm and said, "But then he's clearly in love with a married woman and now wants to poison her husband." He ordered her to bring the poisons, and the woman, not giving up on charming Lin Fan, continued to flirt with him. After some time, she brought the packed poisons and set them on the table in front of Lin. But it still seemed too little, so he asked her to look for more poison, and she agreed and left to search for more. He thanked the woman and pulled out a toad, letting her eat the poison. Our hero's gaze was drawn to a stranger, but then he noticed something strange about him. A huge purple snake slithered out of the man's sleeve, heading straight for Lin Fan. Lin Fan dodged just in time, avoiding the deadly strike of the massive snake. The snake coiled around the stranger's arm, hissing angrily, and the man threatened our hero with death. Lin Fan tensed, realizing he would have been dead in seconds if he hadn't moved fast enough. He asked the stranger who he was, noticing the snake in his hands wasn't an ordinary one. Lin was expecting to hear an explanation from the man, who had beaten Master Gu and taken his golden toad. Hearing this, Lin smirked confidently and asked if he was Master Gu's father. The stranger replied that he was his master, and showed him a snake hissing on his arm. Our hero said he was the one who should give the explanation since he almost died at Master Gu's hands, but the man didn't like his answer. A second later, Lin swung his fist and charged at the stranger. But the man held up his hand with a snake that slithered down lower. The man grabbed Lena's hand firmly, but his snake kept crawling toward our hero. Once she was in his palm, she hissed, while her owner glared hatefully at Lina Fan. In an instant, he lifted our hero into the air with one hand, squeezing hard. After that, Lina realized he was a master, not just some common fool. Then the master hurled Lina Fan toward the side with all his strength. He landed smoothly, thinking about why a great master would leave home, since they usually stay in their clan to protect their family. Master was about to beat Lin Fan until the boy knelt and begged for mercy. Lin asked his student to do the same to the attacking man, and then hurled golden needles in his direction. The man tried to dodge the sharp needles flying at him at incredible speed. Then our hero ended up beside him, armed with 3 long needles. The men exchanged glances, ready for a brutal fight. And then Lin quickly and skillfully drove the needles into the master's chest. His face twists in pain as the sharp needles pierce deeper into his body. He slams his own hand against Lin Fan's elbow, delivering a loud crack with the blow. He orders our hero to stop, since the man from the medicine sect of Gu and Lin isn't allowed to injure him. Suddenly, a sharp golden needle appears right in front of his eyes. Lin brings his needle closer to the master's eye, wanting to avenge the setup with the snake of Gu, and tells him that the father and master should be held responsible for the mistakes and errors of their son and disciple. The man, scared of death, begs to be let go and asks what he should do to stay alive. Our hero asks him to show his valuable items, and after looking at them, he decides whether to let go of the master or not, and the man replies that there's a cultivation book in his back pocket. Lin reaches into the man's left back pocket to retrieve the book. But after inspecting him more closely, he notices a huge spider instead of the promised book. Enraged, he kicks the master into a medical supplies wall with his foot. Laughing at the attempt to deceive him, Lin adds that it's not that easy to outwit him. Lin picks up the fallen book, surprised it's real, but the angry master just threatens to kill every member of our hero's family. So our hero lies, telling him he's from the Lin family and the man better not mess with him. He continues lying, saying his name is Lin Feng and that the master better not seek revenge. Then the master charges out, forgetting his snake, and yells that the Lin family is about to face terrible punishment. Lin Feng notices the master's purple snake is almost fully swallowed by his golden toad. Taking the toad and ready to leave, he's stopped by the clerk asking for compensation for the pharmacy's damage. She told her to go see Mr. Tan but tried to stop the fleeing master. Sometime later, Lin returned to the clinic. Guo noticed how badly beaten he was, assuming he had fought the master, but he explained he had escaped using his wisdom. The girl went to prepare a decoction for him, advising her father to drink the medicine to nourish both body and mind. Just then, Miss Bai arrived at the clinic, asking how Lin Fan was doing, who was very grateful to her grandfather for the acupuncture technique. It turned out she came not just to check on Lin Fan, but to tell him his grandfather had died. This news shocked Lin greatly, since he had seen the old man completely healthy and also had longevity pills. Beizhou told him that Lin's family and Zia's family started working together, and Yin will marry Zia Hu. She also warned Lin that they sent someone to kill him, urging the man to be more careful. Our hero thanked her and said goodbye, clenching his fists in anger and resentment toward Lin's family. He vowed to defeat them, even if they think he's still that helpless kid. Before he could recover, the front door crashed open, and a gang of armed thugs stormed into the clinic. He immediately charged them at the door, showing the payment code, wondering if Beidou really managed to bring them here. The man from the gang replied that they're from the Lin family, so our hero shouldn't talk to them like that. But Lin isn't fazed at all, and he shoots a bunch of needles at the gangsters with a blank expression. The needles cut their legs, and they immediately fell to their knees in front of Lin Feng, begging for mercy. And he answered with a dark look, saying he won't spare a single Lin. The man admits they're actually from the Zai family, who ordered to take care of our hero. But it doesn't change a thing for Lin, and he still promises to kill them. Lin ends up holding a weird bottle in his hands, which promises to free the gangsters if each of them takes a pill. The scoundrels get really scared, thinking he's making them drink poison. Lin told them to take the pills and return to Jindu, telling Zia who they killed him and then wait for his orders. Remembering all his orders, they headed toward the exit, but Lin stopped the men, gripping a bundle of paper in his hand. He reminded the gangsters to pay 34 million yuan for the broken door, and tossed them a slip with a card number on it. The men clearly didn't like the price mentioned and weren't too eager to pay it. Lin twirls the pill bottle threateningly, but only to realize the pills are fake. The whole gang bolts for their cars, desperate to get away from our Lin before things escalate. They drive off hoping to return later and try to neutralize the poison themselves, rather than surrender to Fan. After the whole gang leaves, Lin calls the store to order new doors, but a new shadow appears at the clinic's entrance. Our hero spots him, thinking the stranger must be from Lin's family, not knowing he's someone else entirely. The stranger calls Lin beloved of an and points at him, saying he thought he'd look tougher. Turns out the stranger came to kill Feng, offering him one last word before the deed. In response, our hero called the guy arrogant, while pouring tea into cups and adding that Lin's family sent him to certain death. The guy got angry at such a reply since he wanted to finish off our hero quickly. Pouring tea into a cup, Lin hands it to the guy, thinking he's tired from the journey. The guy takes the cup from Lin's hands, drinks the tea, while Feng stands there smirking, not understanding how the guy could underestimate him so much. After drinking all the tea, the guy notices his head is starting to spin. Lin watches the guy's reaction, but then realizes he drank something other than tea, which is when he'll lose consciousness. The guy can't stand on his feet anymore and collapses unconscious on the floor. Gyu walks into the room and asks her father what happened, not knowing the guy had already passed out. The girl gives Lin the prepared decoction and checks on the guy lying on the floor unconscious. After drinking the decoction, Lin suggests the girl leave the stranger and go grab a bite, only to find the clinic's doors changing. As they head toward the door, the master arrives, surprised by the aftermath of everything that happened in the clinic. Lin's thinking about asking for more money to replace the door. Meanwhile, our heroes head to the local bar to grab a bite to eat. And then a young, attractive girl crashes into Lin. But Lin pushes her away, speaking in a discontented voice and asking her not to use him, only because she's a girl. The beauty winks and flirtingly tells him she smelled his youth. To which our hero replies that he hasn't washed in a month and smells terrible, then asks the girl if her youth also smelled that bad. The guys kept moving forward, leaving the girl behind, but then a group of women in suits approached her asking about Lin's success. One of the women guessed that he either figured everything out or was faking it because of the man with the daughter. Lin's family sent even more people to kill him, which is when they realized there had been no news about Lin's son, Khan, who's currently unconscious in the clinic. Gyu praised her father for his courage in front of the beauty, only to hear him say that such girls are just mesmerized by his handsome face. The boy's words made the girl feel disgusted and triggered a vomiting reflex. Back at their clinic, they found the door open and were surprised the master didn't close it behind himself. They step inside to find the clinic empty and the guy nowhere to be found. Our hero realizes Lin is really trying to get rid of him, so he decides to send his daughter up the mountain. But the little girl isn't happy with that plan and refuses to go, wanting to help her father no matter how hard he tries to convince her that it's more dangerous being with him. In the end, he gives in and lets the girl stay with him, asking her to listen. A door creaks open in the room and another guest walks into the clinic. The one who walks in is Mr. Wan Feng, which surprises our hero. Van gives Lin a firm handshake, happy to finally reach him, but the man insists he came to warn Lin and decided not to call so they wouldn't be overheard. He urgently tells Lin to pack up and run with Gyu to avoid danger. Seeing Gyu, who had been listening carefully to their conversation, Lin asks her to go and make tea for Uncle Van. The little girl pouts, crosses her arms over her chest, and storms off to carry out her father's request. Mr. Van tells our hero that Yin is getting married, and to prove her innocence, Lin's family plans to eliminate Lin Fan, the guy the girl is supposedly in love with. Lin isn't too scared by this, and then Van asks if Lin knows Wei Wei and if it's true that Gyu is her daughter. Our hero darkens noticeably after hearing that from Van, his face turning serious and stern. Lin's change in expression scares Mr. Van, who can't stand the man's angry gaze. Shaking with tension, Mr. Van revealed that Lin knows our hero is still alive and determined to kill him, but Lin wants to know how the man knows that. It turned out Ner told Wei Wei about him and Guo, but they listened and now Lin knows everything about it. Then Van, looking sad, added that Lin wants to marry not only Ner but also Wei Wei. It seems our hero grew even angrier after those words, clenching his fists and cursing the Lin family. Mr. Wan Feng noticed Lin's condition and asked him to take Guo and leave, not to fight the Lin family until he became strong enough, but Feng already had his own plan. The man kept persuading stubborn Lin, telling him that Wei Wei is someone from the Falling Star sect, and our hero couldn't possibly beat him. In response, Lin Feng simply asked when the wedding would be. Wan, excited, clenching his teeth, replied that the wedding was in 3 days. Lin waved off his worried friend's objections to stay out of it and said goodbye, waving his hand. The little girl returned to them and brought the prepared tea. Noticing that Mr. Wan was already leaving, she was surprised, but Lin just said they should go home now. He told her, tilting his head slightly, that the girl would finally see her mom in a couple of days. Lin assured the little girl that if they didn't go, she'd never get back, and then held out his hand to her. Guo was absolutely thrilled, not believing his words at first. The girl slapped his palm, sealing their handshake with a promise to return to her mom. Someone darted past the house nearby, clearly trying to get inside. The door clicked open and a girl walked in, completely unscared of Lin Fan waiting for her. Lin noticed the familiar girl approaching him, who had been flirting in the bar but now intended to kill him. In the blink of an eye, the girl was on top of the man, still in her flirtatious manner, ready to settle things. She winked and stuck out her tongue, offering him a good time with a playful grin. Meanwhile, in her room, little Guo was peacefully snoring away. A group of women quietly sneaked into her room through the window, planning to grab the girl. One of them, not knowing about Guo's strength, grabbed her by the collar and lifted her from the bed, thinking she couldn't do anything. The little girl slowly started to wake up from her sleep, still not realizing what was happening around her. But then she felt someone trying to pull her out of the room and surprised herself by opening her eyes. The girl came to and grabbed the woman's arm forcefully, who was dragging her away. Grabbing her arm, Guo shoved the woman aside with all her strength, and she crashed with a loud thud into the cabinet. The group of women were shocked by what was happening, but they didn't stop trying to grab the girl, who clearly wasn't going to give up that easily. They ran toward her, wanting to steal the child, and do it so quietly that no one downstairs would hear what was happening in her room. Guo's not scared at all, smirking confidently as she prepares for the fight. Eventually, after some time, all the women lay beaten on the floor, while the little girl haughtily scolded them for trying to steal her, which was something a person couldn't do. She quickly ran down the stairs, shouting to her father that she'd almost been stolen. Guo comes down and finds a girl sitting on her father, who in turn is surprised that the little girl couldn't be stolen. She's worried, looking at the girl, not understanding why she wasn't taken, and why she's still here. The girl darts off and charges toward her father and the stranger with lightning speed. Approaching the girl, Guo swings a punch at her, furious, and starts berating Lin for being here, doing such things while his daughter almost got stolen. But the little girl doesn't get a chance to hit the girl, because she quickly jumps off her seat. Meanwhile, the girl's father tries to calm down the fiery Guo, explaining he just wanted to get more info from the girl and then kick her out. Looking at the girl, the stranger asks where her people are, the ones who were supposed to steal the little girl. Crossing her arms with pride, Guo announces she beat the stupid, weak thieves. Hearing this, the girl bolts away, realizing she can't take on our heroes alone. Lin praises the girl, clapping and praising her, but the little girl promises to tell her mom about him through her own friend. He begs Guo not to say anything, but the girl, covering her ears, ignores her father and promises she'll tell everything anyway. Then Lin gently places his hand on the girl's shoulder, wanting to talk to her about something important. He carefully strokes his daughter's head, persuading her to pack her things and leave Xinhai for Jindu, so she won't have to face such danger again, and the girl obediently nods. Lin adds that they need to save his wife's strength for rescuing her, not wasted on fights with the gangsters. The girl agrees to go anywhere, as long as she can finally reunite with her mom and save her. Our heroes pack up and later that night, head out of the house with backpacks on their shoulders heading toward Jindu. A while later, 4 masters and Lin Cheng show up near their house, coming to take Lin and Guo. The villains rush into the house, searching every room and corner trying to find our heroes. Breaking into Guo's room, they find Huo's beaten-up subordinates, that girl who ran away and couldn't beat the kids. Looking over the women lying unconscious, he notices one of them is still alive and breathing. He tries to interrogate her to find out where Lin Hua and our heroes are, and the woman tries to cough and come to her senses. Then she told them the little girl had beaten them up, but they hadn't seen Miss Hua, and the woman heard the father and daughter packing up, which means they were already gone. One of the master's subordinates bursts into the room, but reports that they searched every room, and Lin Fan and Guo were still missing. Lin Zun hears this, realizes they're on the run, and goes straight into a rage. He jumps up from his seat, grabs his subordinates and bolts out of the house, ordering the masters to find our heroes right away. Meanwhile, late at night in the Love Hotel, the backpack is thrown onto the bed, landing on it and kicking up clouds of dust. The backpack is flung onto the bed, landing on it and kicking up clouds of dust. Lin Feng drops his backpack onto the bed, ready to sleep before catching the first train with Guo Guo, but the girl doesn't like this place. The father replies that they only had to pay 50 yuan for the night, so it's worth putting up with. Then he listens closely, hearing footsteps heading toward their room. Just then the door is violently knocked on, and Lin Hua appears on the threshold with 4 masters. The girl shouts that she finally found Lin Feng and will defeat our heroes with 4 great masters. Lin frowns angrily and asks Hua how she managed to find him. She doesn't respond at all but orders the masters to kill him and capture Guo Guo, and they immediately bolt from the spot to attack our hero. Hua couldn't mess up this mission again because Lin Kong had assigned it to her, returning home for safety. The men surrounded Lin, who stood firm in his place, hands hidden in his pockets. He barked at them to kneel before him, dropping the golden poisonous toad from his hands. The masters watched Lin in confusion, looking questioningly at his actions. The golden toad landed between them and began to emit a golden glow spreading in all directions. 2 of the masters hit the ground on their knees, their faces showing shock and disbelief. Hua standing behind, horrifiedly thought that Lin had beaten the masters with 1 finger, not knowing what had actually happened. Scared by what she had seen, she ordered the masters to retreat, once again confirming they couldn't beat our hero. She was told Lin had serious internal injuries and wouldn't survive the fight, but things weren't as she had been told. Lin Feng wasn't about to let them go so easily and sent little Guo Guo to teach them a lesson. The girl instantly outran the fleeing villains, sharp needles in her hands ready to strike. The girl leaped forward, but the kid nimbly threw needles at them, and the sharp weapons, gleaming, scattered in all directions. The needles hit the 2 masters dead center, leaving them unable to fight anymore, while Hua waited for her turn. The poor girl was so scared by our little kid that she twisted her face into terror. And she tried to run from Guo Guo, but as soon as Hua moved, the kid darted straight toward her. In the end, the kid caught up to the girl, delivering a powerful blow to her back, completely disarming her. Meanwhile, Lin dealt with the 2 masters, who stood before him on their knees, trembling. He tells them that the people who come to kill him always botch their mission. The men, scared out of their wits, listened to him, not taking their eyes off the man. Then carefully picks up the toad, which had managed to poison the bullies unnoticed. Lin hides it from them unnoticed, trying to keep his golden toad a secret. Guo Guo brings her father the runaway scoundrels, whom she had scared pretty badly, and asks him what to do with them. With a dark look, he announces he's going to kill them, since Lin never spared him or little Guo Guo. Hearing this, Hua starts pleading with Lin to let them go, since they were just following orders, but the master sitting next to her condemns the girl for lacking honor. Guo Guo worries about potential problems with his dad if they kill those guys. He then asks the kid what other options they might have. Our heroes discuss and come up with a plan to get back at those scumbags. Lin and Guo Guo pull out poison vials, and the kid with a scary face suggests they try out the poison she made. All 5 of them are terrified when they hear the girl's words. Of course, no one wants to die like that. Guo Guo offers each of them a vial, but one of the masters interrupts, threatening Lin again, but he doesn't get to finish. Lin flings something at the man, but it's only to distract him from what's coming next. The needle pierces the man's forehead, jabbing right between his eyebrows, but he doesn't even flinch. The master collapses, spitting a stream of blood, while the others watch in horror, not knowing what to do. Our hero glares at them, his face dark and angry, which means he's ready to fight back if needed. All of them, crying and shaking, agree to take the poison pill offered by Guo Guo, but they don't realize what's in it. They crawl on their knees toward the girl, begging to take the pills, only for them to be the last thing they ever swallow. After taking the pills, the girl declares them her slaves, and they'll only get the antidote if they obey her orders. Then Lin Feng takes off his shirt, which makes the girl question him. Hua vows to serve the little girl until death, hoping to convince her of his loyalty. Our hero throws her the shirt, explaining she should spit on it and tell the Lin family he's dead. He hopes these people are smart enough not to betray him and do exactly as they're asked. Guo Guo unties them. The girl stands up and replies that right now she'd rather retreat with the masters. Lin kicks the immobilized body of the master, telling them to take him too. While the masters leave the room, Guo Guo doubts if it's safe to let them go, but Feng assures her they'll die if they betray him since they took his pills. A black minivan full of villains sped through the city, pulling away from our hero fast. Eating in the car, Hua talked on the phone with someone, saying they finished the job but lost one of the masters. On the other end of the phone, someone was very happy they managed to kill Lin Fan, losing only one master, and then asked about Guo Guo. The girl replied that the little girl ran away, but they've already sent people after her. Lin Feng was dead, and the main thing for his conversation partner was making sure to tell Linny the news so they could calmly prepare for the wedding. 2 days later, the Lin family celebrated their wedding at their estate, warmly welcoming guests, among whom our heroes quietly slipped in. Our hero managed to get past the gates without much trouble, which surprised the little girl. But the father warned her to be careful, since getting out would be much harder. Guo couldn't wait to see her mom and quickly wanted to find her. After receiving a message on her phone, Lin replied to the girl saying they would soon find out where to look for her. Ling Hua wrote him that Ling is on the backyard of the Qing Shui Pavilion. Before heading there, our hero grabs a snack from the tray the waiter is holding. The waiter stares at the man who's leaving with a little girl in a hoodie somewhere. Security was posted near the entrance to the pavilion, so our heroes watched the area from behind the bushes. Ling Feng realized they couldn't get in through the main door, so he suggested sneaking in through the side entrance. Meanwhile, inside the pavilion, the two sisters were getting ready for the wedding, but discussing Ling Feng and Guo. One of the sisters was sure they were alive. The girl insisted that if he gave her a promise, he wouldn't die until he fulfilled it. In asked if her sister was sure he would come pick her up today. But Wei Wei was certain Lin Feng wouldn't abandon her and would definitely come for her that day. Then she asked her sister to tell her more about Guo. In described the child's cleverness and mischief, then she wanted to explain how the child called her Mamalay. But then the door creaked and the child's voice called out, saying the word In had just spoken. The girl at first didn't understand what was going on, thinking her sister had said it. But realizing it was the child's voice, she was surprised, not knowing why the child was there. The little girl was confused, not knowing why there were two of them, and why they looked so much alike, trying to figure out which one was her mom. Two sisters stared in shock at Guo, who had just burst into the room seconds before. Seeing the little girl, Wei Wei ran to her crying and hugged the stunned daughter tightly. Wanting to explain everything to the girl, Yin told her that Wei Wei was actually her mom, and she was her aunt. Guo's mom, looking at her little daughter, cried and begged for forgiveness. She begged for forgiveness for not being there for the little girl all this time, while Lin Feng stood outside the door, listening to their conversation. He recognized Wei Wei's voice and sadly lowered his head, still not ready to go see her. Then he called out Guo because he heard someone coming their way, so they had to hurry away before the man said Wei Wei realized it was her Lin Feng. The girl obeyed her father, quickly ran out of the room, telling her mom not to worry since they would soon free her and In-er. While crying, the woman tried to stop Guo, but her sister calmed her down so she wouldn't draw unwanted attention. Our heroes managed to hide around the corner, watching as the servant helped prepare the sisters for the wedding, fixing Wei Wei's makeup while she cried. After some time, all the guests gathered for the wedding celebration. The host solemnly welcomed everyone while the whole thing was being filmed. Our heroes stood in the corner discussing when and how to act. Lin Feng pulled out a can labeled Madness from his jacket pocket, telling the girl to walk through the hall and sprinkle this poison on the Lin family. If this plan fails, the guys have a backup plan where those people are supposed to scare them. Little Guo ran excitedly into the crowd to carry out her father's orders. Meanwhile, amid the guests' chatter, the host announced the start of the wedding ceremony, asking the guests to welcome the bridegrooms. After completing her mission, the girl ran happily to her father, reporting back with the good news. She boasted about meeting her 3 masters while spreading the poison, but only to find they were already watching her. The masters figured out our hero's plan and asked Guo to pass him a golden plaque with the message from the Huato clan. The little girl happily handed the plaque to her father, adding that the masters would cover for them, so our heroes could safely go ahead with their plan. Ling examined the plaque, thinking it might help them, but not knowing it would forever bind them to the Huato family. Since they were already Guo's teachers, they had to accept the connection, and with a sigh, Ling lowered his cap and kept moving forward with the plan. As the guests chatted, Mr. Zhou entered the hall, a young master of the secret family, one of the suitors, and a recognized handsome man. He was an illegitimate child of the Zhou family, returned to the family 3 years ago with the support of Master Zhou, and eventually became part of the family, but no one knows what's really on his mind. Guo looked at him and thought the people who call him handsome had a strange idea of beauty. 2 grooms stood waiting for the bride, but all the attention was on Zhou, who won over the guests with his coolness. He just sneered, thinking these people idiots. Mr. Zia also didn't like the excessive attention given to Mr. Zhou, and he just frowned in annoyance. Then the host asked the guests to enthusiastically welcome the bride. 2 sisters, identical as if made from the same mold, walked slowly toward the altar in stunning wedding gowns, but neither expected to see anyone interrupt the ceremony. Someone broke the wedding ceremony, stepping forward to ask a question of the Lin family, which surprised everyone in the room. The girls turned in surprise, trying to figure out who dared to interrupt their big day, only to find someone they didn't recognize. Wai looked at the man with hope, thinking maybe Lin Feng had come to rescue her and her sister from the chaos. The man confidently walked toward them, passing through the hall as Wai and Yin tried to catch a glimpse of who he was, but they couldn't make sense of his presence. Before them stood a complete stranger, a light-haired man who looked nothing like our hero, which meant the situation was about to get complicated. The girls were disappointed and surprised at the same time, not knowing who this person was. A man stormed out of the crowd of guests, furious at the unexpected guest's behavior, pushing through the people in his way. The man turned out to be a member of the Lin family, ordering his guards to remove the stranger interrupting the ceremony. The guards immediately rushed at him, but he stood his ground confidently. Smirking arrogantly, he replied that he came to the wedding not to kill anyone. After overpowering the guards in seconds, he demanded explanations from the Lin family, arms crossed defiantly. Lin Feng figured out that this man might be from the Gu medicine sect. He'd recently beaten an old man from this sect, pretending to be himself, and now their whole anger was directed at his family. Something active and twitchy stirred in the sleeve of the blond man. He raised his hand, and dozens of venomous black spiders crawled out from his sleeve onto his palm. Master Lin's family head, visibly tense from worry, realized that this man was from the Gu medicine sect. The man asked Master Lin to hand over Lin Feng to him. The man replied that Lin Feng was just a kid, surprised at how he could have offended this man. But the stranger kept demanding they bring him Lin Feng, insisting he was an adult man and they were trying to pull a scam. Lin's master grew tense in this conversation, not understanding why someone from the Gu sect was asking for a non-existent guy. He clapped his hands and called for great masters, ordering them to get rid of this man. But he didn't back down, stubbornly wanting answers and to take revenge on Lin Feng. Then he shook his hands, scattering venomous spiders across the hall and scaring off the guests. Poisonous spiders scurried everywhere, crawling onto screaming people in fear who ran away in panic. While chaos and panic took over, Lin seized the moment, calling out to Guo Guo and heading toward the altar. Meanwhile, the groomsmen tried to calm their brides, who clearly weren't happy with their company. Then our heroes arrived to save the day, but the groomsmen remain unhappy about their appearance. Zia learns about Lin Fan, asking the man what he's doing here. But our hero ignores them, grabbing Wei Wei's hand instead. He takes her hand and looks into her eyes, finally letting her know he's here to take her and save her. Wang Wei loses her ability to speak, unable to believe her eyes as she finally meets her beloved, tears welling up in her eyes. Lin strictly orders Yin and Wang Wei to follow him, not letting go of the hand of his beloved. But the bridegrooms of the girls refuse to hand them over to Lin Fen, holding them tightly and not letting go. Wang Guo, wanting to save her mother and aunt, charges at Zai Hu. She slams her hand against his throat with full force, leaving him completely unprepared to react. The little girl's punch sends the groom crashing to the floor unconscious, letting go of Yin. Meanwhile, Mr. Zhou pulls Wei Wei to him, ordering our hero to let her go. Lin goes berserk and kicks the bully with a powerful foot strike, knocking him down and pulling Wei Wei to him. The man coughs up blood from such a strong hit. He flies into the crowd of guests, knocking them over, but Master Lin remains standing, shocked by what's happening. He glares at Lin Fen, not expecting to see him there. The old man yells at the guards to stop and grab our heroes, his face full of anger and hatred, only to realize they're already gone. Lin Feng asks the little girl to stay with her mom and aunt while he deals with the guards, and she agrees without hesitation. As Guo Guo and her mom and aunt head toward the exit, our hero confidently steps in front of Lin Tiansu, ready for a fight. Master Lin admits he didn't expect to see Feng, thinking he'd died after the master's attack, but promises today he won't make it out alive. Lin takes off his cap and hurls it aside, vowing the same fate to the old man. Then these two take off running, charging at each other with deadly intent. They charge at each other with fists raised, wild with the desire to settle old scores after so many years. Meanwhile, the guards stop our brides and Guo Guo from leaving, trying to hold them back. The little brat smirks confidently and snaps her fingers. And in that same moment, the guards collapse to the ground, only to find out the poison her father had given them had finally taken effect. Feng slides across the floor, struggling to stay on his feet. Then he turns around to make sure Guo Guo and the girls have left the building and can escape safely. He gets distracted by Mr. Tan's voice, which tells him he's lost. Lin gets hit hard in the chest at the exact same moment. Lin manages to cover himself with his hands, but still crashes through the wall with a loud crack. Spitting blood, he asks the old man if he's really a master of the earth. Skill levels in combat are ranked from lowest to highest. Master, Great Master, Master of the Earth, Master of the Heavens, and True Master. Our hero finds out Tian Hu's skill level is higher than his, but doesn't give up. He brings out the golden needles, blaming the old man for splitting his family 6 years ago, only to realize it's the start of his revenge. He then stabs the needles into his own chest, vowing not to let the old man hurt his family again, but then the pain begins to take over. His eyes turn white, veins bulge on his face, and his mouth twists into a snarl, which is when the real transformation starts. With a crack, Feng activates his incredible power, surrounded by bright flames, which is when the old man finally understands what's coming. He charges at the old man, throwing a fiery punch filled with strong energy, which is when the old man's confidence begins to crack. But it doesn't really scare the old man since he thinks activating potential power will kill our hero faster, only to be proven completely wrong. He charges at Lin Fan in response to those words. The men clash with their fists, creating a powerful shockwave. Lin Tiansu is surprised to see our hero remains unharmed. Lin smugly smiles, saying it's not that hard to stand against the master of the earth. Then he pulls out his golden needles again, holding them firmly in his hand and swinging them before driving them into the old man. In an instant, the needles are embedded in the body of Master. They pierce through his body, dealing heavy damage, which is when the old man spits out blood. He collapses to his knees helplessly, stunned by our hero's attack. After taking massive injuries, Tianhu asks Lin Fan in a trembling voice what he did to him. Lin coldly replies that he sealed his chi points, and now the old man is dying. But our hero notices movement behind him and hears the old man's lively voice, which makes Lin doubt that Lin Tianhu is defeated.